Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
All right, so, they say practice makes perfect, and so I think this episode in particular is a good example of that because pulling behind the curtain, letting our loyal listeners behind, this is the second time we've done this episode, this season review, which we usually typically do in roundtable fashion with a couple of expert friends here in studio. Unfortunately, some technical difficulties put the first take into the digital ether, but thankfully everything's been ironed out. Things are good. And now we welcome back once again, Rabino, publisher, DevilsDigest.com, and Caleb Campero for his canonical second appearance, but we're going to call this 2.5. Yes. We're good with that?
That should break a couple ties. That's why I think I care so much.
It's probably breaks like a 200-way tie. Hode, this is number 95 for you.
0.5.
That's true. That's true. Round up. All right. So obviously we are going to be taking a deep dive into the season that was, some of the things that, the good, the bad, the what it meant from ASU's 2023 season. A lot of good things that we saw, a lot of bad things that we saw, some questions raised. We're going to get into it all. But of course, in the time since that first take of this episode to the second take, a lot has happened. Players are moving. The portal's open. Some staff changes have been underway. Joe and I, we discussed last week a couple of the coaching changes that have been on the staff too. That right now we're thinking are going to be the final changes for this. Gentlemen, what do you think about the new offensive coordinator for the Sun Devil football team, Marcus Arroyo?
Yeah, I think from what I've read and from what I've gathered about Coach Arroyo is just that he's here to do a good job with the quarterbacks, and I think as I'm sure we'll get into about how the quarterback room has shifted and stuff like that a little bit. It was in the article that Hode wrote about how a great guy, a great quarterback like Justin Herbert has had great things to say about him. I think everybody applauds Kenny for what he's been able to do with quarterbacks. So I'm sure he has an eye for it. And, to see somebody like Coach Arroyo come in here with the experience and with that he has with some of these, to upper echelon, even NFL quarterbacks, especially with working with people, at Oregon and stuff like that. I think from a quarterback's perspective, I think it's great. And I'm really curious to see how, him and Kenny will eventually kind of work in cahoots, in terms of just kind of getting the offense going.
Yeah, I think the fact that he developed Justin Herbert at Oregon, that's all I need to know, because I think that is the most important quality of an offensive coordinator is what kind of track record do you have, and not only just elevating your offense to this or that standing in the Pac-12 or in any other power conference. Because let's face it, Bo Baldwin, not to rehash what happened, but he did not have a good track record at Cal when he was an offensive coordinator. And if I'm being honest about it, that hire was a little questionable. I think a lot of fans were not happy with that hire, and unfortunately to them, their fears did actually come true. So Marcus Arroyo, I know, on the other hand, did not excel at all as a head coach at UNLV, but you can make the argument that maybe he was fired just a little prematurely. And sure enough, the first year that he was not there, mostly with his recruits, UNLV has one of their best years, I think in program history. So I don't think he even did that bad of a job as a head coach. But if ASU fans have apprehensive about the job that he did as a head coach, I would say that he's not coming here as a head coach. He's coming here as an offensive coordinator. And with his success that he had at Oregon with Justin Herbert, I think that should really have ASU fans excited, because you have a pretty young core of quarterbacks in this quarterback room in Tempe. So to have a guy like Aurora with his credibility, I think that was a very, very good hire by Kenny Dillingham.
In a sense, it's kind of like the inverse of Bo Baldwin, right? Because a lot of folks, when he came in, were hinging on what he did as a head coach, during his time at the FCS level, and a little bit less on what he did as an offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. You spin this around in a positive, and I think what is the rightful way, because Roy's not coming in here as the head coach. Right. There's so many things that a head coach does that that an offensive coordinator doesn't need to worry about. I mean, that's why a lot of folks think of a guy like going back to, a Dirk Cutter and thinking about how his fit as a college head coach, although he had success here, maybe his personality and his skill set was more orchestrated to be a coordinator. Of course, he went on in the NFL to be a head coach and had some success there, but just different things that are little apples and oranges. So, with this, I'll take a guy who was a successful coordinator and maybe just didn't have all the success in the world as a head coach, again, at a program that has success now, but UNLV, think about one of the most embarrassing losses in Arizona State football history. It was to UNLV in 2008. That was embarrassing because of the state of the program, especially at that time, and that was not just a one-year wonder for the Rebels at that particular point. So, again, narrowing it all down, I'll take a guy who had success as a coordinator, shifted into a head coach role, may not have lit the world on fire. You bring him in a coordinator role, really get him in his wheelhouse. That's a good thing.
And also important to mention, Brad, that Kenny Dillingham definitely wants his offensive coordinator to call plays. What happened last season from week 4 on was really just desperate times calling to desperate measures type of situation. That is not what Kenny Dillingham wants to do moving forward. He wants to be involved very much with the defense, very much the special teams, not only a whole week of practices, but also on game day. So I think the fact that you're hiring an offensive coordinator that can call plays, that is going to have the same vision as you have for the offense, and obviously Kenny Dillingham has a very rich and credible and successful track record as an offensive coordinator. So that's why I feel that he would not hire anybody that he didn't feel like could call plays each and every Saturday, and again, really execute the vision that he has for the offense.
Yeah, some guys are just simply better lieutenants rather than generals. I mean, I like maybe Cliff Kingsbury seems to be like the poster child for that. Great as calling plays, designing offense, but to ask him to do anything more, let's not do that. But that was, of course, perhaps the most notable and expected. But one other move that Joe and I talked about in our last episode. But want to get our expert panel's thoughts on this as well. ASU up front in the trenches on the defensive side of the ball, making a change there. Vince Amy slide into an analyst role with Coach Dyron Reynolds coming over from Michigan State. Seems to be kind of the East Lansing to Tempe pipeline, as we'll get into in a moment. But of course, spend some time at Stanford as well. Some 5 draft picks developed, 2 all Americans under his tutelage there. A Super Bowl ring, as we talked about last week. Guys, what was you think was kind of behind that move? Obviously, Vince Amy, beloved figure in Tempe. But now, good that he's staying in here, as we talked about last week. But what do you think this move means, and what was kind of the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, I just feel that sometimes when you have assistant coaches or even players that are available to you, and you just feel like they're a really can't-miss candidate to join your ranks, whether it's as a coach or as a player. And I think when you look at a guy like Reynolds that spent, I believe, 8 seasons in Stanford before he coached that 1 year in East Lansing, has a great track record. I mean, I think, you can find some parallels between him and Marcus Aurora as far as, the players that he coached in college, what they're doing right now in the NFL. And I think with Reynolds, Solomon Thomas is the first name that comes to mind, that a very successful player in the NFL that did learn a lot from Reynolds, and I'm sure Solomon Thomas would credit some of his success to what he did with Javan Reynolds. But I think also when you think about Stanford, and even though I know Reynolds was there for some of the not so great years in Stanford, usually defensive line is not the Achilles heel of the Cardinal, even when they have an average or less than average season. I think tight ends is probably another position you can throw into there. So with his resume, and once he became available because of the coaching change that we all know that took place with Michigan State, now Johnson Smith is there. Yes, ASU has been the beneficiary also with a one certain quarterback, which I already interviewed Brad, and I'm sure we're going to talk about him later on. But yeah, I think that was just one assistant coach that ASU felt that they really can pass on. And even though I wouldn't call the defensive line, and really maybe more particularly the defensive tackles, because that's what Fitzemi coached, as an Achilles heel of ASU in 2023. I think that moving forward, Kenny Dillingham realized that he had a really true opportunity to get a grizzled veteran coach and still have Fitzemi on staff as an analyst, and really maybe help that smooth transition that Reynolds will have, coaching players that he hasn't coached at all. So I think just another solid move. And again, much like Aurora, they definitely has a resume that lends a lot of credibility to that hire.
Yeah, I think the word that we can use is just track record. Just those people that are proven in their field, and it's just one of those things that you kind of know what you're getting yourself into, which ASU fans have had some experiences with some experiments, if you will, over the last couple of years. But Hote said it with Solomon Thomas at Stanford. Again, I mean, not to just kind of piggyback off Hote so much, but I would call Stanford's trench game. Maybe not the last 2-3 seasons, but while Coach Reynolds' time was there, was not their Achilles heel by far. You knew when you were playing Stanford, you were getting in the trenches and trying to win a game at the line of scrimmage. And when you are known for that on both sides of the ball, I mean, you're doing something right. And he didn't have a lot of time at Michigan State. But again, it's just you know what you're kind of getting yourself into. Again, there's some parallels with Coach Arroyo. And I'm just curious to see what kind of is the next step. As I like to just kind of got some new toys to play with at ASU, and I'm sure the on the recruiting trail isn't done yet. And it's good to see Coach Reynolds already on the recruiting trail. He's been in a couple photos already. So when a coach can hit the ground running, I mean that's some pretty good things to see right away.
All right, so of course ASU's coaching staff's locked up, but next week, the early signing period will open up. Joe and I will, of course, have an episode a day later than usual. So I'm dropping on Wednesday night, just breaking down everything. But one notable addition, because, of course, anytime we record, news always happens to drop. Just before we actually hit record tonight, 3-star offensive lineman and former Oklahoma State offensive line commit Samisi Tonga announced that he's flipping to the Sun Devils. What kind of impact can he make?
Yeah, so 6'4", 310. Somebody who's probably going to be slated at the guard position. I think, ironically, ASU not officially yet in the Big 12, already stealing recruits from the Big 12. So I think that puts a smile on some ASU faces. But I just feel that basically the coaches saw somebody who was just going to be an absolute road grader. Really going to help the interior of the offensive line for the Sun Devils. Samisi Tonga actually visited ASU during the Territorial Cup. So I know sometimes fans thinking like, oh man, we brought recruit this or recruit that, to an awful lopsided loss. Well, it's not that easy, thankfully, that if a player is in Tempe experiencing a pretty lopsided loss, that they still say, yeah, I'm not going to go there because of that one specific. It's
interesting.
Game.
Like fans definitely think that so much, but in talking to recruits, it seems like you talk to so many recruits. It seems like they have a better sense of the big picture than perhaps fans maybe give them credit for.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I just think it you kind of just see the scoreboard, and it's almost like when you check the box score but didn't really see the game. These recruits are really focusing on what they're gonna call home. And they're going to get an understanding of how you as fans react to that loss. They're going to get an understanding of the environment that they're in. And I think a lot of that stuff, and I mean, not to kind of put a Band-Aid on a large gash, but I mean, when you kind of see your fan base kind of like, hey, this was year zero, we're going to bounce back, we're believing in this coaching staff, we're believing in what's being built. I mean, as a recruit, in my eyes, you're going to see that as very encouraging to kind of like, you know what? Hey, that was a bad loss, but even the fan base is willing to bounce back a little bit. And as much as they might be saying, like, I can't believe that's the product we put, well, that should show you the standard that they're expecting and that they're going to hold you to. So that's just how I see it a little bit.
And it creates the opportunity for them to make an impact. I mean, if I'm not trying to spin a horrible loss in a positive direction, but if you see that happen and regardless, I mean, if you're getting whooped like they got whooped, you need help at virtually every single position. So if you're a recruit there, then that's an easy message that can be conveyed. Again, spinning a negative into a positive of, hey, yeah, you saw that I know that Tonga specifically is not a defensive player, but if it was somebody on defense, he's like, yeah, you saw how things got chopped up. We need someone who can come in day one and change this. And that could be, again, I'm not nearly as in tune to the recruiting as these gentlemen, but, that could be encouraging to a recruit's eyes and ears. And especially in this day and age when things change so dramatically year over year over year, that what you see in late November of 2023 could be quite different from what you see in August, September of 2024. So that is an interesting thing, and I would imagine that it's as much the environment as it is the outcome, or more the environment than the outcome. If they see that the fans are showing up and supportive, and it's a cool enough game day atmosphere, and because I know that there were other contrasting experiences, not to derail things too much, but I mean there's a UCLA game, I think, in Dirk. It's the second time I brought up Dirk Cutter tonight, but the second time that like a lot of people think was. I know that Oregon game that year was really the nail in the coffin, but that UCLA game was like the really putting all the nails in the coffin, because it was like a bad performance, bad fan atmosphere, a lot of recruits on the sidelines. I think it was a combination of things that really went south. Whereas, so not all losses are catastrophic when it comes to recruits.
So obviously that'll be just a few days away from the early signing period, where the high school folks and the junior college guys can finally put pen to paper. And I guess, we can't, they don't nobody faxes anymore, but yeah. So, they always say always warm up the fax machines, but yeah, we'll be recapping all that next week. But, the big thing, of course, these days, the transfer portal. Joe and I talked about some of the entries that went in last week, and we'll talk about here in just a moment. ASU's got a nice crop to build on, guys coming in, but since we last joined you, there was a couple of Sun Devils that have entered the portal officially that we didn't get to. One name that we talked about just kind of being off the roster last week, wide receiver Andre Johnson, local kid, Tolleson, been around for a number of years, just never really able to find an impact. Officially went in the portal today, but one guy that was perhaps of note, a highly regarded member of last year's class, defensive end Ashley Williams. He jumped in the portal and actually committed to Louisiana. So he's going to be a Ragin' Cajun here in the near future. Guys, thoughts on, a guy that, especially now with the influx status for BJ Green in the portal, defensive end, perhaps, off that edge, maybe a little concern. And this is a guy that's very talented. One-time Auburn commit, 4-star guy. What are your thoughts on Ashley Williams leaving the program after a year?
Yeah, he basically was homesick. I don't mean to oversimplify it, but that's really what happened with him, and I think it's a shame, because he definitely had one of the largest upsides in that defensive end room. I know that maybe he looked at the depth chart, and even without BJ Green, I think ASU is gladly going to war with Prince Dorba and Clayton Smith as their starters at defensive end. Elijah O'Neal is a player that came on really strong, I thought, in the second half of the year, and a solid two-deep guy. Garrett Stansbury maybe is Ashley Williams just a few years older, and not only because he's from the South, but just because he has that potential that everybody's just waiting for him, to maximize. So maybe in that sense, aside from the homesickness, Ashley Williams did not really see a clear path to be in the two deep, and maybe it's just a little impatient. So you couple that with homesickness, and Brad, sometimes homesickness may not materialize until you actually go home on winter break, and you're sitting down there at the dinner table and talking to mom and dad, and like, maybe I should come and play close to home. So that could be also one scenario with Ashley Williams as well. It really is a shame, but ASU obviously got a guy from Cincinnati, Justin Wodtly, somebody who's a veteran. So as much as you hate to lose a young talent, if you can replace them with a proven veteran in the Big 12, so kind of knows the lay of the land, probably much better than a lot of ASU players right now. I think that's something that can work out really nice. But I'm not gonna mince words. I think Ashley Williams had a huge upside, and it really is a shame that he's not a Sun Devil anymore.
So, Joe, last week you and I talked about just, the impact of BJ Green jumping in there, when you see him, and obviously you have a couple corners guys with starting to experience coming back, but how big do you think the loss of Ashley Williams is, especially a guy who had 4 years of eligibility left, could be a cornerstone?
I think on a larger scale, from a fan perspective, it kind of is a buzzkill, creates some trepidation if guys don't get immediate time. I mean, you look at the signing class from last year, who were the top 3 rated true incoming freshmen that ASU signed. Jaden Rashada was number 1. Numbers 2 and 3 were Ashley Williams and Sean Russ. Those 2 players are going to be in and out of the football program in less than a year without having made any sort of mark. And that's not a statement against them. It's just kind of, the nature of the beast here in college football, where and both those 2 players, mind you, are from, the southeast part of the United States. So being a couple time zones away from Arizona may not help. So these factors that have always been that have been concerns for many years. I mean, how many times have we seen on the message boards of people having that trepidation, that fear of, oh, okay, cool, there's a commitment from New Orleans, great. What's going to happen when the LSU comes calling? At the 11th hour and 59 minutes. The last possible moment. So, again, it just might create that discourse if it hasn't already, which is a thing. We'll see if it's over abused. But again, from the fan perspective, it just might make these high school signing classes seem like, okay, cool, I'll take a look at it in a couple years. I just feel like I've seen more people now more than ever, and it makes sense, saying things like, and I get that there's a fair amount of negativity, a lot of it's warranted around the program. People saying stuff like, I'm not even paying attention to recruits right now. I'll get excited about them when I either see them on the field or, if they're a couple years in the program. So that's just like a general large scale topic of just the whole nature of the beast, whether it's homesickness, which is a valid thing, especially when you're a college freshman. I mean, I moved like 3 miles from my folks out of high school, and I remember having some homesickness. I can't imagine, hundreds of miles away. As far as on the field, as Hode mentioned, ASU's got some solid ones lined up for next year. It's still position groups where it's great to have depth, so you can rotate guys in. We saw what ASU was able to do under the previous coaching staff when they had defensive line depth, and we're bringing in 2 and 3 deep guys and still having a high level of accomplishment. So yeah, that's a loss there, but I think it shows you. When it comes to guys that transfer, one of the biggest telltale factors of, okay, what is ASU really losing out on is where they end up. Who offers them? Where do they go to? So if it's Louisiana, no disrespect to them. Obviously, they built up something very solid on the Group of 5 level, but it's not as though he went to an SEC school or an ACC school or something like that. So it kind of shows you that getting back to home was a big factor. And I'm not sure what his options are, but if that was a pretty quick trigger that he pulled. I mean, because I think he was in and out of the transfer portal in just a couple days, right? So we will see how ASU reloads. We don't know what he would have been, so it's just going to be another case of watching what happens at this school and whether he goes to another one and maybe another one. And I'm not putting this on him. It's just, again, the nature of the beast. We'll see what ASU loses, but if we're looking at the crop of what they have for 2024, Clayton Smith-Adorba, that's a solid combination to work with.
All right, so those are the 2 new additions to the portal since our last episode. So all the other guys that we talked about last week, still in. Defensive back Isaiah Johnson, linebacker Will Schaefer, offensive lineman Isaiah Glass, defensive back Sean Russ, linebacker James Jonkum, running back Javen Jacobs, quarterback Drew Pine, and defensive end BJ Green. And there are 2 guys, though, that have committed. And we talked about Jordan Clark going to Notre Dame last week. Actually, real quick before we kind of dive into, the most notable that has happened in the last week. Quick thoughts on Jordan Clark. He is a lot of guys, fans will target and being like, oh, he's just bailing pretty quick. I mean, Jordan Clark, I think, is above reproach in that area. He put in 5 years, got his degree, left his heart and soul on Frank Kush Field.
Definitely.
No one should have a problem. And I think I haven't seen one negative tweet. No. One social post. I mean, I'm sure they exist, but it seems like most people have nothing but appreciation for what he's done.
I by 100% agree. If you've ever talked to Jordan, he's such a sweet guy, very professional the way he carries himself. We've shared a couple laughs together, just kind of after practice and stuff like that. Just a great character. And I think one of the common themes that you see on social media is just like, you know what, Jordan, you have literally paid all your dues. This is your opportunity. It's one of those things where it's kind of the benefits of the transfer portal, where it's like you have seen 2 head coaches, you've seen all this turmoil, and now there might be some light at the end of the tunnel. But after you do put in 5 years, I think you're just you're kind of you have earned the right to be a little impatient. And like you said, as somebody who has put in the time, the effort, and just the commitment into the program. Me personally, I'm very happy for Jordan and his future endeavors. And again, I'm probably siding with most Sun Devil fans when I just say this is a kid who has paid his dues in Tempe. He has, I think if you ask Coach Kenny Dillingham, if Jordan will still be one of the guys who he will bring up that has set the foundation for what is trying to be built, I think he deserves to have his name mentioned. And and I hope he can go win something.
Yeah, and the fact that Kenny Dillingham took the time to call Marcus Freeman, the head coach at Notre Dame, and just telling him, hey, you got a great one, and just giving just a mile long of compliments, and I'm happy that Ryan Clark, Jordan's father, is also a commentator on ESPN, as we know, former Pittsburgh Steeler great. He took the time to mention that, and he said how much he appreciated Kenny Dillingham, saying that, because not that he expected Kenny Dillingham to just badmouth Jordan Clark after he left, but Kenny Dillingham could have been quiet. I don't think anybody would criticize Dillingham or any other head coach just being very quiet. Like, okay, player X left the program and went to program Y. Okay, great. I don't have to say anything. But the fact Dillingham just went out of his way to call the head coach at Notre Dame and just tell him what a great player and person he got on Jordan Clark, I think that really tells you not only a lot about Kenny Dillingham and his personality, and I would say even pretty shrewd tactic if you want to be honest about it, which is nothing wrong with it. I mean, I wish other ASU coaches did it back in the day, but I think it also says a lot about how Jordan Clark, to Caleb's point, is really viewed by ASU fans. I don't think anybody was really complaining about him leaving the program at all. He's been through a lot of tough times in Tempe, and he almost, quote unquote, deserved that opportunity to maybe experience some success in his last year of college football.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to take away from what folks are saying, and nor am I going to disagree with the, thesis of it all. Think very, very highly of Jordan, even though I'm not around the players on a regular basis. I've spent a little bit of time around him, very, very highly. But it sucks that this is the case. It sucks that ASU is in a position to be a feeder school. It sucks that these conversations have happened over the last few years of, should I feel good about Remy Martin winning a national championship? Should I be happy or upset about the award ceremony that occurred last weekend? These sort of topics, it honestly does. And whether it's for opportunities at a higher profile program, financial opportunities, again, I understand it. But this general conversation is something that a couple years ago would have been, oh man, it's frustrating that he chose to bypass his senior year or his junior and senior year to go to the NFL for a big opportunity. Like, that's what the conversation, that's what the narrative is shifting into now, is basically, instead of ASU being a feeder school for the professional ranks, being a lower tier feeder school for higher caliber college programs across various sports, which will then be the feeder into the professional ranks. So again, I am not trying to, take away from what Jordan did on the field at ASU at all. Think incredibly highly of him as a human being. He's quite possibly the favorite player I've had on the team the last few years, but this is just symbolic of a larger thing to where, again, just to use a very blatant, plain term, it sucks that this is the scenario where it's, hey, you put in your time, you paid your dues. And I'm not saying that facetiously or sarcastically. You put in your time, you paid your dues. All the best at this high-profile school where you can get more TV time, be more successful as far as the team is concerned, potentially make more money. So it would be wonderful if the days can arrive that that's not the case. Be wonderful if that's kind of the inverse of ASU is bringing in these proven, seasoned players to be able to take part in something special. So again, I wish the world for Clark as an individual, but man, it's frustrating because it's the same thing with multiple players that have transferred over the last few years since the transfer portal became a thing, or the people that look at, Johnny Wilson or Ricky Pearsall or Ladarius Henderson. Again, and I'm not taking cheap shots at these people as individuals, but man, it would be wonderful for things to be cut off for ASU to be this feeder school to other major programs.
It kind of shows where ASU is right now in terms of just, their rebuild of just, this is a program that has suffered some bad years and terrible mismanagement. So they're being kind of picked clean a little bit. So just shows the job that Kenny's got to do to kind of build this foundation, start with the foundation of these guys, and then build that up to a little bit incrementally. And then finally, you get to a point, if things go well, and of course there's no guarantees there, that all of a sudden, you do become this school that, now you put the finishing touches on by getting this proven player here, or this exciting prospect there. But it's just, it's a rough spot for ASU but it's one that, they've been in for a long time, just kind of being one of those a tier or two below kind of the top. I mean, obviously Notre Dame is Notre Dame, and it's a great opportunity. And, so just in case anybody missed it, I had a good conversation with Jordan. You can find that on the Speak of the Devils feed. And, he's talking about how he's ASU's #1 fan. He's going to be pulling for this team. And I really hope, because people listen to, because he has nothing but exciting things to say about the future. And, as we all know, like he's nothing but passionate and has been straightforward. So, he really believes what he's been saying there. All right. So we talked about Jordan, and one other guy that has, of note, has jumped in the portal and has landed somewhere. Tight end Jalen Conyers is heading back to his home state of Texas, playing for Texas Tech, where ASU will be later this season. Joe, what do you think about Conyers now, making the move back home, but not just that, but also to a upcoming ASU opponent?
I was quite, I don't know the inner workings of it, but it sounded like Utah had a real strong case there. And again, I don't know the inner workings of it, but if I'm a tight end with high NFL potential, that would be a very appealing spot. There really aren't too many schools on this general side of the country that are doing better things with tight ends over the last several years, and especially, turning ones that are absolute nobodies into NFL standouts. So that one just seemed like it was going to be basic arithmetic. Again, I don't know the inner workings of it at all. So, for him to go to Texas Tech, I anticipate they have some financial accommodations, because he's certainly not the first former Sun Devil to make his way there, across various sports. So that I would anticipate is a factor there. But yeah, he's in the Big 12, so ASU, I believe, will face him. I don't have the schedule on top, in front of my eyes right now, but yeah. So we'll see how a change of scenery works out for him. Another guy that's kind of the new normal of his third stop in 5 years at the college level. That's pretty much going to be standard for a lot of folks. So we will see how that works out. But like I said, I was just assuming it to be a general foregone conclusion, again, without intimate knowledge of his recruitment as a transfer, that Utah was going to be the spot, because it just made too dang much sense. But obviously, different things have happened.
Probably a little bit nicer for ASU fans that it wasn't Utah. Granted, it is still a conference opponent technically, but not one with the recent history of, the
Some call it a rivalry, right?
Some wise folks call it a rivalry. But Caleb, obviously, all season long, you were keeping a close eye on the offensive side of the ball. Conyers is now gone. Ryan Morgan is stepping away from football. Messiah Swinson has exhausted his eligibility. Bryce Pierre, we'll talk about some of the additions to the portal, but what do you think that the departure of Conyers leaves? With a guy like Bryce Pierre, who you saw a little bit. He flashed like 12, 13 catches or so far this year. But is he ready to assume the tight end one mantle?
I really think so. Yeah, I'm a big a fan of Bryce's game. Paying attention at practice. I don't think the blocking is where it might need to be, and that's something that I'm sure Jason Mons will make a point as blocking was something that they worked on daily, and I'm sure that's something that he's going to hear, not just from me, but there's many people that are just, hey, Bryce has the size, the frame, the ability to play at the next level, and it's just a matter of like, hey man, like, this is your opportunity to step up to the plate and hit a home run. Sorry to switch sports here, but and at the same time, you sign a guy like Markinson Douglas from Florida State, and Fortier's coming in, and so there's people coming. And if you're Bryce, you're kind of asking yourself right now, like, hey man, I got to answer the call right now, and this is kind of his. He's on the tail end of his eligibility, I believe.
Got one more year, I believe.
Yeah, so this is make or break time, but I think he has the tools. It's just a matter of putting it together. Jalen was the outspoken, leader of not only the tight end group but the team, and Ryan Morgan had his time to kind of get his playing time in and showed some flashes of what he could bring as kind of like that understudy to kind of like the 1A 1B type of guys, but I think Jalen just kind of getting out of the way and doing what he's got to do for himself kind of opens the door for Bryce. I know they're very close, and I forgot what their nicknames are for each other. It's slipping my mind.
For Jalen, it's Corn. I'm not sure about Bryce.
Yeah,
I never heard of Bryce.
I think they have like a nickname thing for each other. So I know they're close, and I'm sure the conversations from Jalen to Bryce was like, "Yo, hey man, I'm out of here. So do what you got to do." So I think there's guys coming in, but honestly, I would argue that this is Bryce's spot to lose. And I think if I were to talk to tight ends coach Jason Mons right now and be like, are you putting your trust in Bryce right now? I think he would tell me yes right to my face. So Jalen leaving is unfortunate. Obviously, like I said, he was a big face for the program. I think the NIL video that they kind of have going on, I think Jalen's still like the first face you see. But I mean, hey, you got to do what you got to do. And if I'm Bryce Pierre right now, I'm chomping at the bit, and let's get to work.
So Hod, obviously, when Conyers and Clark, those are the two media day representatives from a season ago.
Yes, they were.
So what do you think that says? I mean, is that just kind of the nature of the beast, or maybe to Joe's point, it just sucks, but it's what ASU is right now? What do you think it says? How would you say categorize those losses given their respective production and position groups and returning talent?
Yeah, it's just welcome to NIL, welcome to the transfer portal, and I mean, I didn't do any studies of the other representatives in the Pac-12 media day from the other teams that day. How many of them are in the transfer portal right now, and maybe even start looking at the Big 12 representatives from the 2023 media day. But that's really the nature of college football right now. And when Kenny Dillingham talks about how important NIL is, this is definitely one example of it. But with Jalen Conyers, and this is not me, ragging on somebody that's not here anymore, because Jalen Conyers did admit that he didn't have anywhere close to the season that he did, what he was expecting. I'm sorry. And I think he also hinted what we saw right around the middle of the season, that him and Kenny Dillingham were not on the same page. Remember that 1 week of practice that he actually practiced at wide receiver the whole week, basically sending in the message, hey, Jalen, you don't know how to block, or you're not blocking well. So the heck with tight end. You're going to practice with the wide receivers. And that was a game also that I think it took him a while. I believe it was a Colorado game, but it took him a while to actually see action. He wasn't even starting at that point. And even though things in terms of relationship seemed to be kind of on the mend, and things were getting better, and whatever flashes Jalen Conyers showed, which I don't think were that many, but you did see some of it, I think, in the last 3-4 games of the year. When a quarterback, didn't do too bad, I would say. You thought, okay, maybe everything has been patched up, with Kenny Dillingham, but I guess just the way the season started and on such a sour note. I mean, he had injuries. Honestly, kind of looked out of shape. In the very, very beginning. I just think it was just one of those things where the writing was on the wall pretty early in the season that Jalen Conyers was probably not going to be with his team. He really didn't have much tape to show, but I just feel that a lot of teams that are seeking players in the transfer portal, and definitely teams that have the NIL sack of money right there at the disposal, are just willing to take flyers on guys like Jalen Conyers, which I'm not taking anything away what he did in the last 6 games in 2022, but 2023 was nowhere close to that type of performance. So, for him, going back home, I believe somebody told me that Texas Tech, the campus in Lubbock, is about 200 miles from his hometown in Texas. The NIL check was probably just as good as Utah's, probably even better. So I think from that standpoint, it did make sense for him. But again, I just feel that him not meshing with the coaching staff really kind of led him to the situation he is in right now.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Do you guys think, I asked Hod this earlier, but do you guys think that, Texas Tech, you're playing ASU next year, I think in Lubbock,
it's in Lubbock,
do you guys think that had a little bit of a little extra sugar on top, if you will?
Well, I think Utah, is Utah here?
Utah is going to be here.
Yeah. So, that would have been, again,
right.
That would have been even
sweeter.
More so, because if they would be coming here,
right.
Maybe staying in the Big 12, just to answer the question, maybe staying in the Big 12 as a whole, and being one of the teams on there. It's interesting, and maybe it's NIL driven, but again, I may be oversimplifying it of just comparing Texas Tech and Utah. Texas Tech is a 500 team. Yeah. Utah had a very poor year, but it's because Cam Rising didn't play. That guy's coming back. If he's healthy, that's still Utah will always be a top, 15 to 20 at worst caliber team when they're healthy.
Right.
The team that got down in Tucson and got their tails whipped, that's the exception to the rule. We've learned that over the last decade watching Utah football, in the Pac-12. So, yeah, we'll see how it pans out, and if he has the season. I don't know much about Texas Tech or, many of the Big 12 teams, personnel-wise, and not that it really matters to get used to them now because things can change dramatically with them as with anybody else. But, we'll see how that pans out and if it's something that is, a better on-field scenario for him than was the case this year, because we've seen several others that have sought across various sports that have sought greener pastures, and some have worked significantly, some have not. So we'll see how this works out.
All right, let's talk about some more positive notes through the portal. Some guys that were actually signing up. It was very active weekends, and if you were in the huddle on devilsdigest.com prior, you were well prepared for the onslaught of commits. And it was Kenny was just tweeting out 1, 2, 3, being encrypted, and then all of a sudden, kind of you saw them go down. 8 commitments in total, 7 coming from Power 5 programs. Now, we should note, as of this recording, no offensive linemen, but still some interesting, intriguing guys that we'll go around real quick, get some quick thoughts. So just figure there's an alphabetical order to put. Starting at linebacker, obviously, is a position ASU needs some quality depth. Jordan Crook out of Arkansas, maybe a little undersized, 6 foot, 220, but did play in 25 games over the last 2 years, including a start in the Liberty Bowl, 40 total tackles, 2 years left, and he was like a couple of guys in this group. From Texas, this one specifically Duncanville, which for folks who follow recruiting is coached by Rashad Samples' father. Guys, Jordan Crook, what kind of impact should we expect to him? Obviously, it's an area of need.
Yeah, you talk about the undersized, Brad. Just keep in mind that A.J. Cooper and Brian Ward, the defensive coordinator for that matter, they do want the very athletic linebackers, not somebody that's built like a Merlin Robertson, for example. So he actually does fit the mold of what they're looking at. Somebody that's going to be a true sideline to sideline linebacker, and obviously in a 4-2-5, that's almost a scheme that just forces the linebackers to be much quicker, because you just don't need that traditional Mike tank of a linebacker in the middle. Christian Sam, another name that does come to mind. So so I think just really filling the mold and the vision of what Sun Devils are looking at a linebacker, and very easy sell with that Duncanville connection. I mean, when I talked to Jordan Crook, he said plainly that Rashad Samples is a big brother to me. Is not just a coach. So I know you and I talked a lot about just Rashad Samples and Brian Carrington, and they're just vast recruiting ties in Texas. And even if a player doesn't go to school in Texas, but go to school in a neighboring state. The long arms of Samples and Carrington are going to rein him back into Tempe, and Crook is just one example of that.
So I think, with these guys, a lot of eyes go toward, okay, what were they rated coming out of high school? What have they done at the college level? His rating, if you look at the stars, that doesn't blow you away, but I think he was like a top 20 player at his position as far as a high school recruit, and that's encouraging. And this position group where ASU is going to need some immediate help, meaning like starting lineup caliber help. So this is someone that you're going to assume is going to be in that conversation, or at least need to be in that conversation.
All right, so moving on to the defensive line. Coming over from Purdue, J.P. Dieter, 6'4", 265-pounder, spent 2 years in Purdue. No game action, but a Texas native in his own right. Caleb, what do you think about what ASU's needs in terms of guys to help on that line?
Yeah, well, we just kind of talked about kind of how they lose a couple guys, you might want to get some back, and just talking frame wise, it's something that you really might see off the edge a little bit. Again, no game action. I'm not really familiar with Mr. Dieter's game, but just at that frame and just kind of I don't know. For me, I'm a big person on who's around you. And when you have guys who have also come in like a Prince Dorba or a Clayton Smith, let's say, or Elijah O'Neal who came from the JUCO ranks, I think it's kind of a fun group to kind of get to surround yourself with. And when you have athletic guys like that, and you have the frame, I would say it again, it was 6'4",
265.
Yeah, that's pretty. If you can get off the ball relatively quickly, then
Big Ten size.
I think that's I think that it's something that should be, celebrated a little bit. So concisely.
All right. So looking at the tight ends, of course, we talked about with Conyers, Swinson, and Morgan out of the picture, and Jaden Fortier coming back from an injury. ASU needs some help from tight end. They got a pair. Starting off with a guy who just coming off a pretty successful season, at least from the team perspective. Marcuston Douglas coming over from Florida State. Spent the year as the number 3 over there for the Seminoles. But, we talked about a guy that perhaps, needs some help, or ASU needs some help in the trenches there. 6'4", 285-pounder. Got some beef there. 11 catches a season, or this season, and 14 last year with 4 total touchdowns. A couple years left. Thoughts on Marcuston?
Yeah, he's somebody that's going to need to slim down a little bit just to really fit with the mold that ASU wants. But he's somebody that Florida State, from what I could tell, wasn't too really keen on losing him to the portal. But sometimes you just have a situation where you can have talented players that end up being not only second team but third team, like in Douglas's position. And the tight end group, as you talked about a minute ago in Tempe, is in a very, very attractive depth chart for newcomers to come. So I think that if nothing else, he just saw a lot of opportunity for playing time. Kenny Dillingham being there in Florida State a couple of years ago, that definitely did not hurt the cause over here. So I think that this is definitely one of the better additions so far in the transfer portal for Arizona State, and a great position of need.
Yeah, and I think this is one that might get the casual and the educated fans pretty excited. Maybe overwhelmingly so. I mean, if you look at, all right, he comes from a power program. You look at the measurables, and that stands out to you. And you look at some of the, the film and the highlights and things like that have been shared, and you see some athletic ability. So if you put those 3 things together, again, with this era of mass transfers, I'm sure fans and even those in the know, handle things a little bit differently as far as, okay, what's being gained in this player? Where did he come from? Okay, did he come from perennial powerhouse versus an FCS program? What's that going to do to the impression that I have? What did he do at that program? What measurables does this guy have? When you're going through that checklist of basically this early evaluation that fans do, he's one that certainly passes the eye test.
Yeah. Yeah, eye test, yeah.
Yeah, and so he wasn't the only tight end that they added over the weekend. So Caleb, obviously, it's a position of need. Cameron Marple coming over from SDSU, had 7 catches a season ago. Prior to that, in 2022, 9 games, played primarily in special teams, didn't register a stat. Another Texan and another guy with 2 years left. So multiple years to have to kind of grow into that position, perhaps look in the future after in a post Bryce Pierre world.
Right. No, I kind of see at least Harple right now as just kind of maybe somebody that does kind of fill that Ryan Morgan, role right now. And that's not to criticize his game at all. But you have some production at the Mountain West level. I would argue this is a little bit of a step up. Obviously now you have other guys coming in at the position, solidified guy at the position. If you would like to consider Bryce Pierre that person, but you have 2 years. I don't want to say there's a big rush, but at least at the end of this season, 2 of your guys are not going to be there. In Pierre and I can't remember there's so many names it's hard to keep up right now. But Douglas, Marcuston Douglas, those guys are going to be gone at the end of the season. And right now you can kind of slip into that maybe like third, maybe that like 3A sort of role where it's like you're going to see it. And I think this is going to be kind of come down to kind of what everybody's specialty is, if you will. I think you're going to see Bryce a lot in passing situations. I think you're going to see Douglas in a lot of maybe those blocking situations. Hode said, kind of talking about his frame a little bit. You might want to slim down a little bit. And then, if you're Harple, you're kind of thinking like, all right, where do I fit in this? And the tight end group got a lot of rotational, play this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that you might see again next year. And right now, he might be telling himself, this is a little bit of a step up from SDSU. This is a little bit where I can build the film a little bit, and somewhere where, hey, come 2025, this could be my role to lose at that point.
I think it seems like, what will factor into that is the availability of Jaden Fortier, his freshman year. Obviously, first step, him signing with ASU. Not that that's in doubt, and everything that he's said and done, creates nothing but confidence in that. But these are the days that you just don't trust things until it's in ink on paper. If him with his ACL injury, it sounds like he should be ready for the season, but if there are delays or drags or setbacks in that, that could be, what puts him into a greater level of action. Because like you talked about, it seems on paper right now that you've got your 1 and your 2, and then figuring out the depth from there will be the factor. So at worst, seems like a pretty good depth addition. Again, objectively seems like it would be a surprise if this year is a heavy factor, at least statistically in the box scores. But adding depth at that position group is always a good thing because you don't know what you're going to get with all pieces, so you want to have as many bodies to work with as possible.
And also about Harpool, I mean, Caleb definitely draw a good comparison to Ryan Morgan, but I was told that he is a more dynamic player compared to Ryan Morgan. He has a 6'6" wingspan, so I think he can, bring to the table more than what Ryan Morgan did. And Ryan Morgan, to his credit, I thought definitely showed some flashes in 2023.
Yeah.
But Harpool, from what I'm told, is somebody that if is going to be a step up and not really expected to do a whole lot in his first year in Tempe, but one of the more solid backups that this tight end group had in a while, I feel.
I'm just hoping none of these tight ends have to start a quarterback. So let's just cross that bridge first. But yeah, some intriguing guys. But so now, next up is a guy you'll hear from here just in a few minutes. But a name that's perhaps got a lot of fans' eyebrows raised because he was by some services a 4-star in this past 2023 class. Quarterback Sam Leavitt coming over from Michigan State, 6'2", 205. Appeared in 4 games last year, redshirted, threw for 139 yards, a couple of scores. 4 years left, but everybody is obviously the questions were raised, and we'll get to Caleb's interpretation of Gen Z social media posting here in a moment. But take us through, like Sam Leavitt, as a big notable name coming to Tempe in that quarterback room.
His first offer was from Florida State by an offensive coordinator named Kenny Dillingham. Yeah. So again, just like those recruiting relationships, I'm telling you, it's really a lot of full circle moments. Not only at Arizona State, obviously, other schools are enjoying those full circle moments, but somebody who Kenny Dillingham feels very confident that can really execute his vision on offense. It was interesting when I interviewed Sam Leavitt to talk about hear him say that he likes the pro style of offense that ASU has, all the checks that a quarterback is really allowed to do, being a very timing based offense. So he's definitely very, very excited with knowing Kenny Dillingham for about 2-3 years now to come to a team that obviously feels really, really comfortable with. And now ASU has 2 quarterbacks with 4 years remaining, him and Jaden Rashada. So you're just talking about just really having the future ahead of those 2 quarterbacks at ASU. And I think that also he probably saw that as an attractive depth chart to come to. And obviously, in Michigan State, I mean, I know ASU is not the only beneficiary of the exodus that takes place, but obviously it's just very, very tough when you do have a coaching change for current players to really stay over there and maybe fill it out for a year. Because, and this is not only at ASU, but I think anywhere else, when you're a returning player and you have a first-year coaching staff, it can be rough. Because after your first-year coaching staff ultimately is always going to give the benefit of the doubt to the players that they recruited. So I think a guy like Sam Leavitt, who's a very talented quarterback, he knows he has a new offensive coordinator, new head coach, obviously, and he just didn't really want to roll the dice to see, okay, am I getting along with them, and do I agree with the offensive philosophy? And with Kenny Dillingham, for a guy like Sam Leavitt, it was really more of the sure thing.
All right, Caleb. So you are representative of Gen Z. So right after, of course, with the blue chip, Jaden Rashada already here, same number of 4 years of eligibility like Leavitt. Jaden yesterday tweeted out a picture of Kobe with, I believe, Ron Artest in his face, and then also a picture of Kobe just screaming, afterward with a dice emoji.
Yeah.
Interpret.
If I was the one who put out that post, I think it's definitely just a response, of just like I'm going to one. I think the caption, I'm rolling the dice, and I think Jaden is obviously committed to ASU and what he wants to do, and I think that was a big step for him to begin with through his kind of recruiting, hoopla, and people will say what they want to say. And I think, again, it's just this is kind of his way of being, like, hey, I'm going to roll the dice with myself. I believe in myself. Kenny had exit interviews with everybody. So there was obviously words exchanged where I think Jaden believes in himself, but, I'm sure Kenny told him some stuff too. Like, hey, man, you're the guy. And I'm probably gonna have to bring somebody in, or I plan to bring somebody in, but then it's up to you. You know what I mean? And then the Kobe thing, I think everybody's first instinct is Mamba mentality, and I think that's what it is. Just saying, I'm not gonna back down. I'm gonna wake up and work, and I'm gonna work until I can't, and when I can't, you best believe that the job will be done. So yeah, if I'm I know everybody was also a little curious about Harlan's post about the buffering, but I think Jaden is gonna make his decision, and he did, and I think in my best Gen Z interpretation, I'd say he's betting on himself and executing his a lot of the mama mentality that a lot of athletes kind of keep very close to them.
So Hode, staying on the quarterback topic here, if there are no further departures, you would anticipate that there would be no further additions from the transfer portal. There is a quarterback that not terribly long ago entered the transfer portal that, number one, has experience with Kenny Dillingham as his offensive coordinator. Number two is from the general Phoenix area. Of course, that's Ty Thompson from Oregon. If there are Sun Devil fans out there, which I'm confident there are, that might be a little, I don't know if disappointed is the right word, that ASU brought in Leavitt when you have this 4 to 5 star high school recruit. Ty Thompson from Oregon, from Arizona, seems to fit that bill that we saw last year with a lot of what ASU did in the transfer recruiting. What would be the reaction to that, pretty much assuming that Ty Thompson may not be a target for ASU right now?
Yeah, I think that if Dillingham felt that Ty Thompson was really somebody that he felt very, very comfortable in executing what he has planned for the offense, maybe he would lay off a guy like Sam Leavitt, for example. Does NIL come into picture? Yes, I think definitely when you talk about high caliber transfers like a Ty Thompson, I think that really is always a consideration. I think with Kenny Dillingham, he sees this program still in rebuilding mode, and to get a guy like Ty Thompson, when maybe you have some work in progress pieces, for lack of a better term, around him, maybe he feels like that's not really going to be an environment that Ty Thompson can really excel in. And Ty Thompson on his end, maybe he just looks at the situation in Arizona State and says, I want to go to a more established program, and as much as I know Kenny Dillingham from that 1 year together in Eugene, I don't know if it's really the best situation for me, even though I would be coming home. I know that, when it comes to quarterbacks in available spots, I think the windows of opportunity are narrowing more and more and more. But Ty Thompson, I think, is just making a calculated decision that maybe Arizona State is not the best place for him. And from what I know, I don't think ASU, once Thompson was in the portal, really went hard in pursuing him. So Kenny Dillingham just decided to take the certain path that they decided to take. And sure, I know some ASU fans might be disappointed with that, but if nothing else, I think it speaks to the confidence that Kenny Dillingham does have in a Sam Leavitt, obviously has in a Jaden Rashada, and I think all that leads to the situation where Ty Thompson is not being pursued by ASU.
Yeah, if I may add, I just, if I'm Ty Thompson, I look at the situation like Coach said at ASU, where you kind of have two guys on the younger end that have shown flashes, shown that they're going to be able to do something, especially under Coach Arroyo now and Coach Dillingham, where Ty Thompson's now to wait behind two guys and two guys that are getting transferred in kind of on top of him. And I think he's just kind of like, you know what? If I'm him, I might even say, I might try to take a step down from Oregon to just so I can just kind of be plug and played versus having to go through a brutal battling process when I've already had to wait behind two guys. And I just don't think that the picture at ASU right now really fits what he might be looking for. But I don't know the kid, so.
Neither do I. And it's interesting how, and again, not to derail it, how, pride and egos factor into these transfers. You get guys that, though it would be wisest to, go to a G5 school, maybe even go to an FC. I'm not saying specifically for Thompson, but for these ones, it's okay, the writing's on the wall, go someplace you can play. But pride and ego gets in the way. It's no, I'm going to go to a top-tier program, and I'm going to figure it out. And, betting on yourself can work in some circumstances, but it also can be what results in multiple years of college football and nothing having been done. Again, that's more of a statement of the scenario versus this particular player. He's a tremendous recruit coming out of high school and very likely has a high market value at this point. So a unique situation, because a overarching thing that I've noticed, at least in this early slew of transfers, and again, we can get back on topic, is two things. Number one, you're not seeing a ton of grad transfers. You're seeing ones, whether it's calculated, whether it's just random circumstance, that ones that are transferring with multiple years. So you figure, okay, hey, we got you for at least a couple years, because unless the NCAA figures their stuff out and permits across the board, 2-time transfers without a degree. You're also not seeing a ton of Arizona natives like you saw last year, and that might have been a circumstance for year one, when you just really have to hone in on the relationships you already have, because you have such a small window of time to work with that you can't necessarily go out and build those. But I think both those two things are positive steps, because I know there are a lot of fans, especially in the huddle, that are a little leery of really going all in on Arizona prospects. So again, just a couple of observations from this early first week or so of the transfer portal.
So obviously this spring should be fun. Another nice quarterback duel with a couple of blue chippers, and we'll see how that pans out. Quickly wrapping up this kind of the incoming section, a couple of defensive backs coming in from the Power 5 level, of course, Bro Torrance and D Ford, ASU starters from a season ago. We're going to be off to the NFL draft. Javan Robinson of Washington State, 6 foot, 169 pounds, was a top reserve for the Cougs. Obviously, great familiarity with with ASU's defensive coordinator, and AJ Cooper was the guy who recruited him to Pullman. He actually got a start last year against the Sun Devils. And Terrence Welch from LSU, 6 foot 193 pounder, a former 4-star, reserved the last couple of years, just had 9 tackles last year. Robinson has 3 years left. Welch 2 years left. Obviously, with the need in terms of those top 2 guys leaving, but also some young talent in the ASU room. I mean, how do you think these guys factor in?
No, I'm not familiar, as they've had kind of limited roles with their game too much. But if there's one guy I'm putting my trust in, it's Brian Carrington. Just with his ability to kind of see what kind of young talent he has already brought in, how they're going to develop. You can even look at a guy like D Ford, who had to make that adjustment from playing at the FCS level, where now you're lining up against Rome Odunze on the road, or some of these kind of very talented Franklin from Oregon, some of these guys that are going to be playing on Sundays. And, you have to make that adjustment. And Coach Carrington obviously helped to make that adjustment. So if there's a coach I'm going to trust with the development and the scouting, it's going to be Coach Carrington. And he's going to see something that I'm not. So I look forward to it. And I think, like you said, 2 and 3 years of eligibility left. This kind of fits that, like, they're not freshmen. They're also, not going to leave you in a year. So they kind of fit kind of like that, not so top heaviness that, but not so just incredibly raw that we've kind of seen on the roster right now.
Yeah, Javan Robinson, like I said, Brad, is just a really no-brainer decision. He's familiar with the coaches, he's familiar with the scheme, he's familiar with what exactly to expect. So that was really just a very, very easy decision for him. And also I also touched on the point that there's really an exodus of players from both Washington State and Oregon State, because they feel like they still want to play in a power conference. And obviously, if you're going to stay in Pullman, if you're going to stay in Corvallis, that's not going to happen. It's Mountain West heavy, peppered in a game with Washington, a game with Oregon. But other than that, you're really not going to have a chance to really play the top competition even each and every Saturday. For him is really an easy decision. Now, Terrence Welch, when I talked to him, extremely motivated. I mean, just that SEC swag. That I wasn't able to show that much, but just watch out. I'm ready to burst. and sure, I mean, he has to back it up. I know that's overstating the obvious, but nonetheless, Brian Carrington and Brian Ward did see something in him, and the measurables over there as far as being a taller corner. And I think even just with those two additions, when you have a 6', 6'1" corners coming, then you can see that maybe that's part of the vision that Brian Ward does have for the cornerback room. It's going to be really interesting to see the battle between them and Ed Woods, who started quite a few games, and Keith Abney II, one of the promising freshmen for Arizona State in 2023, who definitely has a very, very bright future. So, we talked about the quarterback battle being heated, but I think low-key the cornerback battle in spring practice is going to be very, very interesting.
So Welch, to me, is the most intriguing incoming transfer to date, and that's not a real hot take. Rivals ranks outgoing transfers, and they have him ranked as the number 139th best, and that's the highest rated transfer commit that ASU has right now. And just to put that into some perspective and context, I mentioned Welch is 139 overall. Jordan Clark, number 141, so Rivals has him rated as a higher caliber transfer than Jordan Clark. Jalen Conyers, number 145. Mighty have fallen. Again, I'm not trying to throw a bunch of shade at him, but a year ago, if Jalen Conyers would have transferred, he would have been one heck of a lot higher than the 145th overall transfer prospect. So just a unique thing that caught my eye. So just to put that, again, into perspective of a couple guys that are leaving the program, Welch has some folks, at least in some high places, that think a little more highly of him. I don't know how they maybe we don't need to get into it. I don't know how they factor multiple years versus one, and if that weighs into the evaluation if they're a grad transfer with 1 year versus having more than 1 year. But there's some folks that think highly of him, and he's someone that, again, if you're forecasting down the road, it seems like it'd be a disappointment if he's not in the starting lineup next year.
Yeah, and so you'll hear from Robinson a little bit later on in the episode, and some really good things to say. And so as we close things out, is on the defensive line, obviously another guy you'll hear from in just momentarily, Justin Wodtly from Cincinnati, 6'3", 275-pounder. Spent 3 years at Cincy, which means he made a playoff run just a couple of years ago. 7 tackles for loss, 4 sacks over his 3 years. A guy with 2 years left. Really interesting guy, and a nephew of Troy Polamalu. So that's obviously huge points in my book. But obviously, as another position of need on that defensive line. What can we expect from Wodtly?
Yeah, you talk about position of need, Brad. He's actually flexible in his assignment, where they could be a 3-tech or just a true defensive end. But somebody, I believe, 6'3", 275. So it definitely has the size to play both. Another guy with a huge chip on their shoulder. Didn't put up great numbers in Cincinnati, but somebody that probably just feels comfortable. Cincinnati being in the Big 12, granted only for 1 year, but he really knows the lay of the land right now. And this is somebody that Arizona State obviously really thought highly of. You talk about Deron Reynolds. Deron Reynolds definitely gave his blessing to each and every defensive lineman that was added from the portal. It wasn't Brian Ward just overruling Reynolds if he disagreed or anything like that. But I think Woodley is definitely one of the more intriguing additions so far in the transfer portal. And again, his flexibility really just makes, I think, his addition that much more interesting. Really curious to see come spring practice. Does he line up at 3-tech? Does he line up outside? That's definitely going to be interesting to follow.
Yeah, so obviously some quality additions, more to come. The still have a couple of weeks left of the transfer portal madness, but before we dive into our season review, you a chance to hear from a couple of these guys. Next up, you'll hear from Justin Wodtly, coming over from Cincinnati, talking about his time in the Big 12 and some lessons that he's going to bring to Tempe. And then after that, you'll hear from quarterback Sam Leavitt about why he chose ASU and how he's looking forward to the quarterback competition. All right, Justin, obviously, you hit the portal. A lot of schools are after you. What were some of the key things that you were looking at for your next destination, and why did Arizona State check those boxes for you?
Man, well, first I wanted to be in a situation where I would be playing for a stable coaching staff. I don't want to, be recruited by somebody and then, it gets crazy in the college football world and then they end up not being there. So I felt that, with this staff being new, and energetic, that that they're going to spend a lot of time here trying to, rebuild this program, turn it around, move it in the right direction. Secondly, I wanted to play in a defense that fit my skill set, be able to maximize all the opportunities on the field. Talking with Coach Ward and Coach Reynolds, man, I feel like the defense that they run here can definitely maximize a lot of opportunities for me. And then third was also being able to compete for a starting job or a significant role in the defense, man. So all those boxes were checked by Arizona State, man, and being able to, have all those answers, and then on the flip side, see so much love and so much, energy and passion coming from the staff, the city, and the players, man. It made the decision really easy.
So obviously those boxes are checked, but then you come out here for a visit. Once you're here in Tempe and kind of taking in what it is to be a Sun Devil and everything that it offers, what were the things that really kind of jumped out to you most during your visit?
Man, the energy from the staff, man, and the love, man. Coach Reynolds, Coach Ward, Coach Dillingham, all those guys, man. It made everything feel at home, and that was a big part for me, being that I'm traveling all the way across the country, you know what I'm saying? So feeling at home was very special for me, and seeing the vision, seeing the plan, the things that they want to do here. It's not, all unreachable goals. It's not all unrealistic expectations. We can do a lot of the things that we can do in college football. We can make it out of this place. You know what I'm saying? So it was all those things went into account with, making the decision for me, man. And it was pretty easy. I could tell you that for sure.
So you mentioned, of course, that it has that home feel to it, but as you got to know, just some of the folks, the people behind the program. Overall, what's your kind of read on the vibe and the culture that's in place? Obviously, it's still a relatively new staff heading into the second season here, but what's overall your vibe on kind of just the culture and what it is, how it's been established here in Tempe?
Well, what's really easy to understand is that Coach Dillingham is trying to win, and he's trying to win right now. You know what I'm saying? So he's surrounded himself with a bunch of vets, being able to have an opportunity to play for Coach Reynolds, who has a tremendous resume, who's been coaching at, real big name schools. He's coached in the NFL. He works with the NFL Pass Rush Summit, with guys like Von Miller and Aaron Donald, and Max Crosby and things like that. So, being able to put myself in a position to be surrounded with, so many great people and with very high expectations, I feel like it was only right to do that because it'll eventually put me in a position where I want to be and to be successful in those ways as well.
Kenny Dillingham obviously had a lot thrown at him in his first season as a head coach. Thought, in covering the program, did a pretty good job kind of given all the circumstances and what he inherited, and has, really got things on a positive trajectory. What's your read on him as just kind of the leader of the program, a guy who's obviously got an offensive mastermind kind of reputation, but also just now that he's a head coach, how do you see him as the leader, kind of leading this program in all the aspects?
Man, very, very energetic. He brings all that energy. Being able to connect with him and just talk with him a little bit, he makes it very comfortable for his guys. You know what I'm saying? So as far as, being able to connect with him, reach out to him for anything. And, having a head coach that you're comfortable with, having a head coach you can mesh with, is always very important because you never know when you're going to need that down the line. So being able to play for him and hear his philosophies and hear the things that he wants to accomplish going into next season, man, it was very easy. Like I said, I keep saying it, man, but it was very easy to make the decision after hearing everything that the school, the city, and the community really has to offer.
So you mentioned earlier that the scheme and the defense was one of the big boxes that you wanted to have checked, and the ASU did that. When you look at Coach Ward's scheme and the kind of the pressure, the chaos that it likes to bring, it's it's one of the reasons why he's here is that Kenny Dillingham liked to, the trouble it gave him when Kenny was still the OC at Oregon. What is about Brian Ward's scheme that really kind of jumps out at you, maybe specifically about what they ask of its D-line?
Man, it's a very attacking scheme. You're not sitting, you're not trying to read blocks. You're getting up the field, you're causing penetration, and you're causing a lot of, mayhem on the way to the quarterback, man. It's not a scheme where you really have to sit and think about too much. You get to just play football, you get to put your hand in the dirt, and you get to go. And I feel like that benefits me as far as, man, I'm very attacking. I'm very, I have a very high motor. I'm explosive. I can see myself playing on the edge. I can see myself playing inside on a 3-tech. I'm a versatile player, man. So I feel like playing in this defense really maximizes the opportunities, not only for me, but for everybody else around me as well.
You touched on Coach Reynolds having quite an impressive resume in terms of what he's been able to develop, and most notably the recent stops at Michigan State and especially at Stanford. Not having not gone through a practice with him as of yet. What's your read on what kind of coach he is, and that's going to be a guy that's going to be able to kind of unlock your potential and develop you?
Man, being surrounded by a guy like that, man, it only gives you so much more confidence, in yourself. Confidence in your D-line coach that he's going to use all the resources to, turn you into the player that you really want to be, So I have nothing but trust for him, nothing but love, man. I definitely feel the vibe that Coach Reynolds can get me to exactly where I want to be with this game of football, So I trust him. Reading that resume, like I said, man, it's kind of hard not to. So, yeah, man, I'm excited to play for him.
So, and one of the cool things that really jumped out to me and kind of researching and getting to know your background a little bit is even though you're a Cleveland guy, you're a Steelers fan like myself. I'm a diehard Steelers fan, and that Troy Polamalu is your uncle, which is like, for my money, watching him play, oh, what a blessing that was. What has it been like, being a Steelers fan in Cleveland, but also having an uncle of that stature? What kind of advice in terms of the game and both on and off the field has he given you over the years?
Man, Troy, like he's probably one of the most humble guys you'll ever meet. If he was just walking down the street, you wouldn't even know it was him. That's the type of guy he is. That's how he carries himself. So, what I learned from him is really, humility. Being able to, win and be very high, but also, stay very level-headed at the same time. So that. He's a very, very hard worker. You don't get to do the things that he's done. Win 2 Super Bowls, do all these things. Go to numerous Pro Bowls and things like that without working very hard, man. So that hunger, that dedication, knowing that no matter how high you get, there's always more to reach past it. So he motivates me with that, man, and being able to be closer to the West Coast, or that my side of the family. That I have out here is, man, being able to be closer to them. I don't think that my family that I have on this side of the country has been able to see me live in person. So there's an opportunity to do that coming out here as well, man. And also what you're saying, being a Steelers fan in Cleveland, man. But it goes a little bit deeper than that, man. I think I'm the only Steelers fan in my household. so yeah, man, it's a house divided up here, man. But it's been fun, man, because for the majority of, my life, the Steelers have ran that rivalry,
Yeah.
So I get a little bit of bragging rights on my dad and stuff like that. It's been cool.
Awesome. You touched on earlier, high motor player, a lot of energy, a guy who likes to attack. What other things will ASU fans see from you on the field? Kind of give our listeners a self-scouting report on what you're going to bring to this defense.
Man, I'm a competitor, man. Being at Cincinnati, I've seen the highest of highs and I've seen the lowest of lows. You know what I'm saying? So playing in the Big 12, going into the Big 12, I've been there. I know exactly what it's about, man. And I compete. I like to win. My first 2 years in college, I went to, the Peach Bowl my freshman year. Probably should have beat Georgia. And then the second year, went 13-0, went to the college football playoff, had a chance to play one game away from a national championship. So winning is everything that I'm about, man. I'm a winner. I want to come in. I want to help this team win now. And I want to be able to put myself in a position to play at the highest level. And to do that, man, you can't take any plays off, man. Like I said, I got a really high motor. I'm very explosive. And this defense that Coach Ward runs, man, and all the things that I can learn from Coach Reynolds, I feel like we have a very bright future here. And I'm coming in to give, Sun Devil Nation and Tempe everything that I have.
Obviously, yeah, that playoff run was pretty remarkable. Seeing the Bearcats, repping the G5 like that and making some noise on a national level. Obviously the last couple of years here for ASU been pretty rough, but the trend line seems to be up. So as a guy who's had that high level success, that's been to the pinnacle of what this sport has to offer, what do you think what lessons can you impart upon this Sun Devil program about knowing what it takes to win and what it takes to get there?
Man, it really, at the end of the day, you hear a lot of coaches preach about it, but it really, really does come down to the little things, man. Knowing that you can lose a game off of one mistake, a false start penalty. I think we just seen it this past weekend with the Kansas City Chiefs, man. If Kadarius Toney lines up on sides, man, it's a different ball game. You know what I'm saying? So it really comes down to the small things with this game, man, and just really being disciplined, man. When you get a whole room of guys on the same page, you get a whole locker room on the same page with one common goal and everybody trying to work to the same goal, man, and you can see it can be done, man. Out of a group of 5 school, man, we had a lot of talent. I was surrounded by a lot of NFL guys and a great head coach in Luke Fickell. So, that I learned coming into coming into college that, you have to learn what it takes to win, man. And you have to learn to be disciplined and you have to learn to do all the little things right. So that's really what I learned coming from that program. And that's what I want to, try to instill in this program.
So a couple of years in the American and now most recently one in the Big 12 and of course ASU's future home. What should the Sun Devils know about what life is like in the Big 12?
Man, it's easy to lose, but it's really easy to win, man. I was just coming out of a rough season. We went 3-9, but I think that out of a lot of those games that we lost, man, if a little, like I said, those little things, if a little bit of things went differently, man, our season could have went a whole lot different. Whether it's picking up that first down on 4th and 1, or not getting a personal foul, or not jumping off sides. That's what I learned, man. This conference is, it's not something where, I came from, the American and I had to take a step up, man. Arizona State's going from P5 to P5, man. It's going to be a little bit different of a change over here, man. You have a little bit more resources and we can definitely win it all. We can definitely win it all. And especially with this 12-team college football playoff, man, we got a shot for real. So
an Ohio guy, you ready for this Arizona Heat?
Hey, man, I'm excited, man. I took my visit. I didn't really know what to expect too much, man. But when I got down there and I got a chance to see that, shoot, it's 70 degrees in December, man. It's a long way from home for sure.
Then, of course, when you're looking ahead to this upcoming 2024 season, first in the maroon and gold, and you'll be running out through Tillman Tunnel next to the Pat Tillman statue. And what are your goals? What do you want to get out of this upcoming season?
Man, I want to play for a shot at a Big 12 title, in a college football playoff berth. Man, I want to play for the fans of Tempe. I want to be able to experience that stadium, man. I walked through it a lot, and I was getting chills in an empty stadium. So I don't know what I'm gonna feel when it's full. So I want to experience all those things, man. I want to win. Like I said, Coach Dillingham's bringing in a lot of winners. He wants to win right now, man. So that's a big thing for me, man. Besides last season, man, I've won at every stage of my life. Little league, high school, my first 2 years of college, man. So that's really big for me, man, coming into a situation and surrounding myself by a bunch of winners and, going to work every day and getting that job done.
All right, here with new ASU quarterback, Sam Leavitt. Obviously, when you're looking at, some of the schools that are coming after you put your name in the portal, why was Arizona State ultimately the right place for you?
Yeah, it's just after having so many conversations with Coach Gillingham and Coach Arroyo, you got a feel for the type of coaches they are and the system they run, and just felt like the best fit for me.
And what were some of the things that, some of the maybe the boxes at your next destination that you wanted to check off that Arizona State ultimately was able to check off for you?
Yeah, for one, they've had success with other quarterbacks in the past. Coach Dillingham being with Bo Nix and Jordan Travis. Coach Arroyo being with Justin Herbert. So, they've had proven success with quarterbacks. Obviously, you can see Bo Nix for the Heisman and Jordan Travis probably would have been as well. And then, Justin Herbert obviously playing really well in the NFL. So it's just, things along those lines.
And of course, once you got a chance to kind of, see things in person up close on a visit, what were the things that kind of jumped out about just the program, the surroundings, the facilities, every kind of all-encompassingly the time in Tempe?
Yeah, I think it's just how the whole coaching staff meshes, It feels like it's a family environment, and everyone gets along. And, I really like the stadium, got to see that. It's just, you just feel a certain type of juice about the whole coaching staff.
It's kind of maybe along those lines of the juice of the coaching staff. What was kind of your read on just kind of the vibe and the culture surrounding the Sun Devil football under Kenny Dillingham heading into its second season?
Yeah, it feels new, but it feels like he's really creating this really good culture. And I can't wait to go be a part of it. I feel like he's been successful everywhere he's went. So, just teaching kids how to win, and being 1 year in last year, it's difficult, but as something builds, I just feel like it's going to turn into something really nice.
Obviously, this is a relationship that you've had with Kenny since his time back all the way at Florida State, and they were the Seminoles were after you as well. How have you seen kind of that relationship continue to grow over the years as he's kind of maybe jumped spots, and now that you guys are reuniting in Tempe?
Yeah, I originally got offered my sophomore year by him when I went on a visit there. Got to know him a little bit. I was still young in the process, so I didn't really know what I was looking for, what other coaches were like. That was my first visit actually ever. And then, got to see him go from there to Oregon, and just continued success, and building up the rankings, and then going to Arizona State. So it's just cool seeing him, develop and have the success that he's had.
With that the development and kind of making the jumps over the years and rising up the ranks, you first knew him when he was an OC. Now he's a head coach. How do you see him as kind of the leader of the program, kind of overseeing not just the offense, but all aspects of this Sun Devil football program?
Yeah, I mean, for one, he's a really honest man. So that's a big thing you look for in a head coach. And it's just the way that they carry themselves. So 24/7, he's the same person. You can ask anybody in the staff. He was the same person I met sophomore year as he is now. So it's just the consistency and the type of person he is, it's going to take him a long ways.
So obviously getting to know Kenny Dillingham, and also, as you mentioned earlier, Marcus Arroyo, ASU's new offensive coordinator. When you got to really kind of talk ball, X's and O's, and dive into the offensive scheme, what really jumped out to you about what the offense asks of its quarterback, what the kind of the features, and kind of what you really are excited most to run?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way that I can control the whole game myself, whether it's checking out a pass plays, checking the protection, knowing where the blitz coming from, when my running back's going to get out in protections, just having the whole tool bag in terms of that. So, if we don't have the right look on a run play, I have every tool to get out of that, out of 4 different looks, and so it's just I have a whole playbook I can choose from, which is my favorite way to play, because now I can dictate how the game goes.
Any Sun Devil fans out there who might not have seen you in action for the Spartans, give our listeners kind of a self-scouting report. What are the things that you bring to the field in terms of your skill set and weapons?
Yeah, I feel like, one, I get out there and bring a lot of juice, so I'm gonna make everyone around me play a lot better. 2, I feel like I'm a playmaker. I'll make plays when nothing's there, and I have a strong arm as well, and I feel like I'm a smart player with the ball, so I'm not gonna make a lot of turnovers, and I feel like I know how to win.
Are there any quarterbacks out there that you kind of model certain aspects of your game after?
I don't know if I model certain aspects. I kind of just try to make what plays are right for me when the time is. But I like to watch. I like to watch a lot of Joe Burrow, and Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, is really fun to watch. But I like a lot of Joe Burrow stuff.
You're obviously a very good guy to model some stuff after as well. Of course, looking back at last year, you got some game action with Michigan State. What kind of jumped out to you about your performance in that first year, and how long do you think it took you to kind of acclimate to making the jump up from high school ball to obviously the Big Ten?
Yeah, I feel like I did a really good job. I didn't have too many opportunities in every game. It was kind of just like you get thrown in there and you got to go make a play on the first drive. So I felt like almost every single first drive that I was in, made an impact in the game against Minnesota, going and scoring, and Michigan should have went down and drove and was on the way to score and got marched short of the line of scrimmage or the first down marker. But yeah.
So, of course, he had some experience in the Big Ten, but now coming down here to ASU, and they're making the big move to the Big 12. Do you think anything that, kind of that from your experiences and lessons learned from a season in the Big Ten can translate forward to the Big 12?
Yeah, it's just more games under my belt. And, playing in Big Ten, you're going to play against, we played Michigan and Ohio State in the best competition in the nation. So it's going to set you up for anywhere. There's a lot of the front sevens, obviously, dominant in the Big Ten. So you got to feel the physicality of what college football is all about.
Of course, coming down here, as a blue chip recruit yourself, another blue chipper here as well, in Jaden Rashada. What do you see as kind of the value of competition, especially in a quarterback room?
Yeah, you just always are going to get pushed every single day. So it's what are you going to do to get better that day compared to the other person? Because at the end of the day, you're not competing against them. You're competing against everyone in the nation and yourself because you're trying to get to the NFL. And so it's always gonna be beneficial in a quarterback room to have that competition so that, the best man's going to win out and you go from there. But it makes everyone better.
So, of course, in this era, obviously ASU's been very active and had a very successful weekend, landing several commits, including yourself over this past weekend. Kind of as the quarterback, as that that leader, are you kind of looking to rally some others to join you here in Tempe?
Yeah, no doubt. I'm always talking to Coach Arroyo and Dillingham and just figuring out who else we need to get, and I'll hit them up on the phone, and I just need to get everyone I can so we can do something real special.
And of course, as a quarterback, you're a leader of that offense. How would you describe your leadership style and some of the things that you think really kind of stand out about you as a leader?
Yeah, I feel like for one, they're going to see the work that I put in the off season. So everything I say on the field is from the heart. I'm not going to BS anybody. And I feel like everybody sees how genuine I am. And on the field, I get everybody juiced up. Whether it's dead or when we're too high, I'll calm everyone down. I feel like I'm always going to be sort of that middleman that has good energy, so that's what I feel like I do.
A guy who began his life in the Pacific Northwest, making the way over to East Lansing now, heading out to the desert. You ready for kind of the desert life and maybe some of the summer heat?
Yeah, I'm ready to see what it's all about.
So looking ahead to next fall, what are some of the goals you have for yourself that when you look back upon that 2024 season that you want to make sure that you were able to accomplish?
Yeah, I have a bunch of numbers goals in my phone for the season, but I'm not going to sit here and list those. I feel like some of the main ones, is obviously win the starting job, win X amount of games and just have a successful season and set ourselves up for the future, Going into year one, I still got high standards, but it's going to be difficult to obviously go win the Big 12 as a first year in the system and all that, but I feel like it's really possible. But just having constant growth throughout the whole season and always getting better.
Your commitment has really gotten some ASU fans pretty excited about in the course of this off season. So what would be your message to Sun Devil fans? Obviously the program's had a couple of rough years, but trend line is moving in the right direction, moving up. What would be your kind of message to Sun Devil fans about what you're going to be bringing and kind of the future of Sun Devil football with you?
Yeah, as a fan, I feel like you can be really excited this time because you got a new staff with a new fresh team coming in, and there's a lot of upside. So you're going to see a lot of high-powered offense performance, and you saw last year a really good defense as well. So there's a lot of things to look forward to.
All right, guys. Now it's take two, if we will. We did this a couple of weeks ago, but still very relevant points. Just concluded the 2023 season, and obviously some highs, some lows, some question marks, some promising things for the future. A lot of stuff that we got to dig in, kind of interpret, because this is a very critical offseason that we've talked about, very active offseason. But let's start off kind of the big picture. After the bowl ban came down before the season, Kenny Dillingham repeated and consistently said that 2023 was about getting better, getting better, getting better. And then after the season, he said that they didn't really get better after week 6 or 7 due to the injuries, not being able to practice to that level. All right, so we'll maybe start over here with Caleb, go around the table. Did you think that they improved throughout the year, or how much they improved? Do you agree with Kenny that they kind of hit kind of like a stalemate at the middle, or do you think that they were at least able to get some progress done on that very important front that he hammered home.
Yeah, I think they definitely just kind of hit the ceiling, given the circumstances, the injuries, being at practice, it really was majority of the defense and offensive time was against the scout team. And, when you had the schedule like you did this year, I mean, it's gonna, waver in a way that, isn't the best, unfortunately. But I think as the weeks did go on, there was, a significant amount of improvement. I think we can all say that seeing kind of, I don't know if the Southern Utah game is really a good place to start because of how you have a 3-hour delay in between. But, I would argue that, once things kind of got going with Trenton, just kind of that was the quarterback that kind of started to solidify. I know there was 5 different quarterbacks to start this season. But once kind of Trenton found as much of a groove as he could, I know he wasn't 100%. I think that Washington game was kind of like hey, this the pieces are there. Kenny said multiple times that he believed in the roster that he had, and unfortunately they weren't able to put it away. They weren't able to put that game away, and they kind of did stall. But I think they were headed in the right direction, and then you just things happen, and then it really did kind of stall, and rough losses against Arizona and Oregon and Utah, and I know you pick up the win at the Rose Bowl, but it just kind of left almost like a not sour taste in your mouth, but just kind of like you woke up at 3 a.m. and you need a glass of water, but the water's not there, so you're just kind of like smacking your lips, just like well, that's about it.
Yeah, I'd say there were definitely instances of improvement, but just about every time that those instances reared their head, there was equal or more significant downside that happened maybe as soon as the next week. I mean, you think about the ups and downs of the Fresno State was a debacle. And then there was an encouraging performance against USC, even in a loss. So, okay, things are trending up. Then you go to Cal, a game you should have won in every capacity, and you don't. You're back down to earth. Then things flounder a little bit, and then you get, an encouraging, again, moral victory loss at Washington. You come back and you beat Washington State, or even that Washington game, some would say you win as well. So that kind of had mixed reviews because you're playing tough against a team that ultimately is going to the college football playoff, but you don't win that game in a game that if you do a few things differently, you could claim a huge road victory. You come back, you beat Washington State. Things are up on the high level. Then you go to Utah and you get smacked around. Then you go to UCLA and win. And then you end the season with 2 just losses where you're getting run out of the building. So you really don't know what to make out of what. I guess the way that I think about it is, and it can be more of a rhetorical question than anything else, is, what was better, 2023 or 2022? If you're just taking on a very objective scale, which season was better? In 2023, there were some close losses. There were the 3 wins. Then there were 4 games where you're not even competitive at all. So again, when you compare it side by side and you're really having to size up the ups and the downs, kind of leaves you with not much to really sink your teeth into when making an analysis. And so that's what was difficult about it. But yes, there were incremental improvements, but when those happened, momentum was something that was very difficult for this team to gather, and it's not their fault in full because of the personnel issues, but you have to take improvement and couple that with momentum in order to really, figure out some trajectory. With this team, it was just like, okay, on this week they played good, on this week they played terribly, and came out in the wash of a 3-win season.
So obviously with Kenny Dillingham saying it's all about improvement, how successful was this team towards that goal? I mean, how much better was the team after week 13 than the group that we saw week 1, given kind of all the hurdles and injuries that they had to encounter?
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw some promising signs from the USC game through the Washington State game, and I think the month of November was a brutal one. I mean, sure, you'd have that win at UCLA in the Rose Bowl. That was just a lot of smokes and mirrors executed to perfection, but I think that the world of sports in general is a lot of what have you done for me lately, and you do have the recency bias, and unfortunately for ASU fans, just those 3 blowout losses in November, even though you have that I would say, pretty special win in the Rose Bowl against UCLA, sandwiched in there. That's what ASU fans are really going to be left with in terms of the memories of the 2023 season. I still think the fan base at large does believe in Kenny Dillingham. They did answer the call when it came to increased NIL efforts and then NIL contribution. So I don't think Kenny Dillingham by any means has lost his fan base. I mean, they're still willing to give him time, and maybe they're thinking that the Big 12, not to sound like a Pac-12 elitist, but it's not a daunting conference compared to the Pac-12. I mean, especially this year's Pac-12. I mean, if you talk about going out in a blaze of glory, this Pac-12 was one hell of a conference. And even, I know the LA schools faltered, towards the end, but, September, October, I mean, those are two teams that were playing very good football. And I think at the height, there was at least 7 teams in the top 25 from the Pac-12, maybe even 8. I don't know if I'm, not remembering correctly here, but nonetheless, I mean, it was just an absolutely very, very strong conference that ASU picked the wrong time to be in rebuilding mode, if you will, when you have just a lot of quality Pac-12 teams. So I think that this fan base still has the patience, and they realize after 2023, they really do have to have the patience. The Joe's, point, I mean, 2022, that season was kind of ended before it even started. Just because everything that transpired in the 2021 season, when you had a head coach that didn't want to even be here, and Ray Anderson forced him to stay, for a campaign that was absolutely going to be a horrendous one, which, not to rehash, old wounds, but why wasn't the postseason man taken in 2022 when the team was going nowhere? So that's something that probably, I would say, angers the fan base more than what took place in the month of November in 2023. So, fans knew it's going to be a rebuilding process. Fans knew that it's going to be patience exercised. And if that was your thinking on Labor Day weekend, then you figure, then really you were not disappointed in what transpired at the end of that campaign. But, losing a Territorial Cup game in a fashion that ASU hasn't lost, I think, in quite a while, especially in XMP, that is just, again, that recency bias that's maybe going to really, grab the attention of ASU fans. But maybe just look at 2024 as, you're just starting with a clean slate, brand new conference. Again, I think a conference that maybe offer you some more opportunities to succeed, and maybe just have that renewed hope in the program for those reasons alone.
All right, let's move on to some red flags that were raised during the year. Some things that perhaps, we saw over the course of those 13 weeks that maybe gave us a little hesitation for the future. Let's start off with Joe. What are some things that, maybe gave you a little trepidation about the direction of the program?
I'd say one is just kind of the over-reliance on the weirdness of the offense. I get a lot of that was by necessity, especially with health issues at quarterback, offensive line. I mean, health issues everywhere. I can't imagine that the creativity that we saw offensively over the course of the 2023 season is going to be, commonplace across this program for the foreseeable future for Kenny Dillingham. I'd say the other red flag, and this is just, I hate to continue to use the phrase nature of the beast, is that this program just needs to get more talent. And the way that things are now in college athletics, as we know, beating this drum 1,000 times to death, is that's not necessarily, that sort of thing doesn't necessarily happen by way of the ace recruiters and the facilities and the things that were recruiting tactics of days of yore, such as 5+ years ago. Comes down to money. That's what it is. And we've seen that, and there's been about as much transparency. I am curious if there are many other quote-unquote major schools in the country that have been as transparent about their desperate need for fundraising as Arizona State has been in the past couple of months. And it's essentially what they need to do because the public needs to know about it. So that, to me, is the biggest red flag, is that this program simply needs to get greater talent in it to be able to improve and compete. Because, again, going back to that topic of that feeder school for larger programs, you cannot have every single year where you can have predictably your top 3 to 5 guys on the team and have half of that list bolt for greener pastures, pun intended. So getting and retaining talent is kind of like that preemptive strike of a red flag that we saw this past year because of how ASU was against other programs when they were completely outmatched talent-wise. Now, I don't expect Arizona State to be on par with, you know, the Oregons of the world or the USCs in terms of talent on the roster, but others like in Arizona, things like that, yeah, there's no excuse to be blown out of your own home stadium with a team that just a few years ago to the day ASU beat by 63 points. So that was the biggest red flag to me, is just how big of a disparity there is in talent with what ASU has compared to its competitors. Now then, that is something that in theory can be remedied with relative short order, but it does take a lot of dollars and cents. So that's the biggest red flag, is ASU's need to fundraise.
Yeah, we'll dive into some NIL stuff a little bit later on, but Hood, some things that some red flags that were raised for you.
The Fresno State game, when you, in a blink of an eye, you're playing your third string quarterback. That is something that you just knew, like, wow, this offense is really in trouble, and that's on top of the very, very slow start that both Jalen Connors and Elijah Badger had. Two players that you expected to have absolute breakout years, and just seeing the turmoil in the quarterback position with all the injuries over there. Obviously, the well-documented injuries on the offensive line, and again, Connors and Badger maybe quote-unquote victims of all those circumstances, getting out to the slow start that they did. I think those would definitely have red flags for the offense, and the fact that Kenny Dillingham taking away the play calling duties from Bo Baldwin, the offensive coordinator, only after 3 weeks, definitely a red flag. And I don't think so much that nobody had faith in Kenny Dillingham for actually being better as an offensive coordinator and a head coach at the same time. But when you need to really change course in such a dramatic fashion that early in the season, let's face it, realistically, you just don't think that the offense is now really off to bigger and better performances than they saw in the first 3 weeks. So to me, that was just a really huge red flag, with just the offense having so much turmoil on so many levels and so early in the season that this really almost sets you up for failure. And sure enough, that was the case in the 2023 offense.
How about you, Caleb? What gave you a little bit of pause looking at the future of the Sun of football?
I think for me it was two things, and I'm going to piggyback off these other gentlemen right here with the offense. I just think, unfortunately, Bo Baldwin didn't do the greatest job in terms of the play calling, and that was pretty evident really early. And then, unfortunately, I feel like that then took kind of away from Kenny and what he maybe hope to do and be a part of in different aspects of looking at the entire team. And then I feel like Kenny did a good job to kind of do what he had to do to put some wins together or at least be competitive. But again, when you just have that unreliability on an offensive coordinator, it puts pressure on you as a play caller and a head coach. And at the same time, from a player's perspective, you might get used to a game plan, maybe set up and situated one way, and that kind of quickly turns over to another. And I just think it kind of, just kind of snowballs a little bit. So that's number one. And then number two, I think for me, was special teams, having now moments, a little bit more reflective moments. Obviously injuries put a damper in somewhat of the field goal, units. I don't think a kick was returned for a touchdown, a kickoff. I could be wrong.
No,
I don't think so. Right. So that's good. But I would have liked to see a little bit more consistency. I personally think that Josh Carlson somewhat gets the short end of the stick because punting's hard. And then when you have broken bones in your foot, that makes it a little bit harder. And I think he tried to play through it. And then you have place kickers that are then trying to transition into punting. As a former specialist myself, that is a very difficult thing to do, to go from place kicking to punting. It's very different. But again, I just would like to see people suited for the job. Obviously, injuries play a factor in that. But I just would have liked to see a little bit more consistency. I think I would have liked to maybe see Badger finally got it going towards the end of the season with kind of that explosive return game, but it did take a long time to kind of come to fruition, and hopefully that some of those wrinkles can get ironed out coming up this season.
For me, I was just kind of concerned that, and this might go to the kind of building of the foundation, but that they didn't respond well when they were facing it in-game adversity. Obviously, all season long was adversity in terms of just the injuries and personnel. But even Kenny talked about even a couple of players after in some of the post-game press conferences of just how when they get punched in the mouth, figuratively speaking, they did not answer well. They did not kind of rise to the occasion. And so you saw a tendency to have some bad stuff kind of snowball, especially the last two games. A prime examples there where this team perhaps just ran out of gas. But I think that this is, a red flag that was probably raised, but also is on the radar. And one of those things that if the rebuild goes in the way that the coaching staff wants it to, will kind of rectify itself going forward. But you saw those things that, this is a team that was dealing with a lot of adversity, but when they happen in the games themselves in terms of just maybe a bounce goes against them or something, that it just happened to kind of snowball. And that was not something that you necessarily want to see when you're already kind of, behind the eight ball in terms of just being so depleted. Let's be a little bit more positive now. Let's kind of start off with Joe again. What were some reasons for optimism for the future that you saw throughout the course of the 2023 season unfolding?
One thing that I've gone back to multiple times here is just the continued buy-in that we saw, and obviously things curtailed in the last couple games of the season. The Oregon game, fault them less because that's just a high-power program. But especially going into that UCLA game on the road, that was one that could have been lost. There are others along the way. I mean, this thing could have fallen off the rails before the end of the month of September. I mean, that Fresno State game alone with USC coming into town, I remember Brad and I were not even facetiously guessing 30, 40 point losses. I think I had 50 something to something in the teens. Things could have really fallen off at that point. They did not. Now again, a lot of this you got to take with the grain of salt, because a lot of the key factors and a lot of the people that were in leadership positions on both sides of the ball not going to be on this roster next year and could have been. So that is something that, again, I'm not trying to make it a backhanded compliment or those sort of things, but those leadership positions on the field need to be filled. I'm sure they will be, but that's just another thing for this staff to do. But again, reason for optimism was this coaching staff enabling and cultivating a culture where this program and the players in it remain bought in, because once again, this thing could have gotten as ugly as some spots were throughout the course of the season. That could have been a weekly thing from an early point.
How about you, Hod? What made you feel good about the future?
I'm going to say the defense, and I know a lot of people are not going to agree with that because of what transpired in the month of November, but I just felt that ASU ran into three buzzsaws. I mean, and I know Utah, ironically or not, after that win against ASU, really cooled off, especially on the offensive side. But they were still running pretty high when they did beat ASU the way they did. Oregon is Oregon, and Arizona. I mean, we all saw the offensive numbers that they put even prior to the Territorial Cup game. So in some sense, you're not really shocked about what they did on that side of the ball. But I think the defense definitely gave me a lot of hope that Brian Ward, almost in a New York minute, was able to build a very, very solid group. I mean, definitely didn't have the depth that he wanted, especially at linebacker, especially at defensive line, but definitely offered at the same time just a lot of hope that there's a great foundation to build upon. You take even a game like Fresno State, 29-0 to loss. That was not a bad defensive performance by the ASU defense. I know you just look at the score in a vacuum. Like, are you kidding me? Of course the defense played wrong, but look at the box score. Look at the play-by-play. I mean, that defense gave up, I believe, a touchdown in the opening drive of the game and the opening drive of the second half. And other than that, it was field goal. I mean,
15 points off of 8 turnovers.
Exactly.
That's amazing effort.
Yeah. And I know I belabored this point to death all year long, but this ASU offense on 90% of the games just did not give the proper support for the defense. And even to take a game like Utah, I mean, okay, you expect the offense to maybe somewhat respond, somewhat show the defense like, okay, we can keep this game somewhat close. But there have been so many games like that where the offense just absolutely MIA, and that really just wasn't really helping the defense. But I think ASU fans, and I know it's hard to look at those 3 lopsided losses in November, should be very, very optimistic about the defense. I know another thing I said many times before, to me, there's less items to fix on defense compared to offense. and it may not even be close. So to me, the ASU defense did give a lot of hope for the future.
All right, Caleb, what made you feel good about the future?
I'm gonna have to second Joe with the buy-in for me. I know you might see, Jordan Clark hit the portal, Jalen hit the portal, BJ hit the portal, but a lot of the younger guys and a lot of the guys that have found themselves to ASU have really just raved about what is hope to come, or what they hope is to come to Tempe. And I think about a guy like Deshaun Mallory, who just raved about how this place just resurrected. Not only his playing career, but I think him as a person. He talked about the moment he shared with Vince Amy. But just seeing these younger guys like Caleb Black, Keith Abney, just like, hey, we're cooking. Let Kenny cook, as the Gen Zers will say. But then I see a guy like Xavier Alford, who has just been nonstop on Twitter, just like, we're building something, be excited. And this is a guy who has yet to play a snap in the maroon and gold. And then like Joe mentioned, this team, there was a lot of moments where it was easy to just kind of throw in the towel, and some might argue that that's what happened at the very tail end of the season. But there was times where in post game pressers, it was Jalen Conyers was up there saying, you know what, it was a bad first half. We said we're going to win the second half, and that's what we did. And that happened I think that happened in the U of A game. I want to say that happened in the Oregon game. And you might be the
Hang
one
the banner.
You might be the one to say, they had their backups in, or they took their foot off the gas. But when you and your locker room is saying, let's go try to at least finish something that was started, then you got to do it and live up to it. And I think they did that multiple times. So I think just kind of the post-season kind of energy that has been looming, and as frustrating as the season was, I mean, I know USC didn't end up turning out how everybody expected them to, but you kind of go into Seattle and things aren't going well. You could have easily just been like, you know what? Now now we know this team was college football playoff bound, and it's a hostile environment, but they didn't, and they gave them their best shot. I just think that's it. The buy-in for me is just what's big.
For me, I was really impressed with the staff, and maybe Kenny in particular, and we'll grade Kenny here in a moment, but just the way that they were able to adjust to everything that was thrown their way. 4 days before the season, postseason ban, self-imposed, dropping from the athletic director, everybody getting hurt. You having to play 5, guys at quarterback, 11 different combinations on offensive line. I was really, sometimes you see coaches and staffs that have let their egos get in the way, and like, this is the way we're going to do things. But that wasn't the case. I mean, Kenny was open to do whatever they needed to do to put their team in the best chance to win. And this is not, and he said, like, I owe it to the seniors. I owe it to the guys in the team to do everything I can, even however orthodox, to just find a way to win. That's maybe finding an offense on YouTube on Tuesday and then implementing it in the Rose Bowl on Saturday and getting that. A lot of the innovations and weird outside the box things didn't work, but at least they were trying something. ASU's known for innovation, and they were innovative, and sometimes innovation falls a little flat. But ultimately, I thought that this was a staff and a coach, a young head coach that learned some lessons that were shown that they're adaptable. And I think that, this is in the modern college game, you got to be able to adapt and kind of roll with everything, whether it's injuries or maybe questionable decision-making from the higher ups in the athletic department or at the university level. So I think that for me was kind of like, okay, this is something that, this is a guy who gets it, is adaptable, and, hopefully when things solidify with more talent and more resources and hopefully more better injury luck, you'll be able to build upon that and iterate and go forward in the future. All right. So let's get to it, though, because it was an up and down year for Kenny Dillingham, as any 33-year-old head coach at the Power 5 level would be expected. So, Joe, how would you grade Kenny, in this kind of difficult year one, or, even kind of do you give him a year 0?
I think when we did our first run of this, I invoked the name of our good brother Chili and saying I wanted to give him an incomplete, but I wasn't for the incompletes when we had that going on in that round table. We all love Chili in his education background.
Very generous creator, as we've learned.
Yes, you know, hey, it's
I'll take his class.
yeah, right. Yeah, seriously. I'm gonna go C+. Basically, kind of the good and the bad, or the elements that are controllable and uncontrollable. You know, the postseason ban, roster issues, personnel issues. I mean, these are things that he had to work through, and I don't envy him, nor I'm sure few coaches in the world would envy that scenario, having to deal with that. Now, then, there were winnable games that were lost by way of some coaching gambles. You know, there were some highlights, there were some down spots, so it's a total mixed bag. When you win 3 games, you know, that to me takes you out of the running for an A or a B grade, even with the odds being stacked as they were. But now then I'm not going to say it's a D or an F. So for me, it's kind of on the cusp of some positivity. And, you know, it would have only taken a few plays here and there. I mean, if you can get that Cal in that Colorado game, win 5 games, then for me it would have been way, way higher grade. So I'm going to keep it somewhere in the middle, about a C+.
All right, Hode, what you doing?
Yeah, I'm going to be consistent with my grade from 2 weeks ago, and I'm giving it a B-. I mean, sure, there were some rookie head coach mistakes that were made. I know some would argue that desperate times calls for desperate measures has basically been the mantra of this Sun Devil squad in 2023, and maybe that did lead to some decisions that you can look back and say that they were questionable. But just like Caleb and Joe said earlier, just the buy-in. To me, that's what prevents at least myself from giving him a C grade, because as we all agree, this team could have folded 10 times during the season and never did, especially after that loss to Utah, which I really thought forget about Oregon and U of A, which I wasn't feel too comfortable about. ASU winning those games. I thought even UCLA, which again at the time was still playing pretty good football, I thought that they would beat ASU and just have this November be 0-4. But that what they showed in that UCLA game, with all the smoke and mirrors and the crazy quarterback combinations, the swinging gate and everything, that just really showed how much this team is really fighting into the very, very end. And, going back to my earlier point, I know when you look at those 3 losses in November, I mean, they're not just losses. They're just absolutely boat race defeats. But nonetheless, I felt that Kenny was really able to keep the ship afloat as much as he could under extreme challenging circumstances. So for that reason, I give him B-.
All right, Professor Campero.
I will also give Kenny a B-. I just think, I don't know how many times I said in the original recording of this, how many times I said the situation at hand was just, I mean, you could ask almost anyone, and it was like, have you ever seen anything like this? No, in terms of just injuries alone. But like Hode said, I mean, he just somehow just duct tape this thing as much as he could, in a sense, to just really just try to just make things work. Brad, you touched on it with just kind of the swinging gate. I could just say swinging gate. That's it. That's the tweet, and people would just be like, yeah, that's what this season came down to. But it got them a win at the Rose Bowl. But to Kenny's credit, I mean, for a first-year coach, a head coach, I should say, to get all of these curveballs thrown at him, I think he's somewhat lucky to be 3-9, but I think at the same time he's just unlucky that he wasn't 6-6. We talk about all the time that the Guillory drop against Oklahoma State.
Yeah,
that might be a win in the win column. You don't give up that late deep ball against Colorado, and that's another. You don't give up that game-winning field goal. I don't. Man, it's like I bring up the Washington game, and then my mind automatically goes to the Super Bowl against the Patriots for the Seahawks, where it's like, maybe you don't throw that ball and you try, and you were running the ball effectively the whole game and you try to punch it in. That's 6 wins, and that's not even to I'm a big
The Cal game, you too.
Cal game, and then USC if Trent's maybe healthy, you know. So those are just a couple of the instances where this team could have won a lot more games, and I think that's, again, like Joe said, you know, it was a little bit on that, maybe gambling a little bit, but I think at the same time some of them were player mistakes and things like that. So I don't want to say it kind of balances out, but in a sense it somewhat does. But just to kind of just it's almost like you're trying to row a boat with a hole in it, and it's just kind of like you see the water level rising, and you just do what you can. You scoop as much water as you can. And luckily, I think they're back to the dock, if you will. I'm just full of metaphors today. But yeah, you know, just given the circumstances and everything, I think just Kenny did his best to just do what he could do. And like you said, Brad, you know, he had to put his foot in all these different camps, and the coaching staff had to come up with all these different ways to try to attack things. And it's like, man, you just give him some better injury, just luck, and just maybe some even more you know, foundation at quarterback, and this might be, who knows what could have been, you know what I mean? So yeah, all that to say B-.
Yeah, I'll say B- too, because I think, yeah, if you go from absolutely historic, horrific injury luck to just bad injury luck, the course of this year zero, to me, and I've said it all season long, I think this is a year zero just because of the mess that he inherited. You know, this year, even before kind of the bowl ban, was kind of like a free year of just like, knock everything down to the studs and build up. I do think that, you know, there was a lot of rookie head coach mistakes, and I think that perhaps some were, maybe he was emboldened by, you know, this being with the bowl ban, like, okay, some, you know, wins and losses don't matter. He flat out said wins and losses don't matter a couple of times. Just, you know, in terms of just, you know, the laying of the foundation is the most important. Getting better, you know, in the locker room and on the field was most important. And I do think that like significant strides were made in that area. You see some of the young guys like the Keith Abneys and the Caleb Blacks of the world, you know, foundational guys or potentially foundational guys that are very excited about the future. I mean, if the trend line was in a different direction, you might see those guys with all those years of eligibility being able to jumping in and maybe heading elsewhere, but they seem bought in. You saw the way that all of us talked about just how this team has continued to fight, even though the odds were significantly stacked against them. Yeah, I think there was too reckless at times and got too cute on some of the calls, but some of the innovation that I talked about in the last point of just being really impressive, I thought that was great. And so I think once you get kind of that more stable foundation after with year zero under the belt, and hopefully another successful round of incoming transfers and signees that are able to provide some more talent. You get some guys like Xavier Alford, Jake Smith back after their NCAA imposed sitting out. I mean, you're going to have, and hopefully you get, you know, just some decent, stable quarterback play.
Yeah.
I think that then we'll start to see, you know, because I do think, you know, to Joe's point, you know, probably the best grade or the most accurate grade is incomplete, but we're not going to take the coward's way out. We're going to give grades here on this show, and that's what we do. So yeah, all generally speaking, the difficult year. So let's wrap things up with this. Obviously, 2 seasons, 3-9, different ways and routes to 3-9. Ultimately, though, this is a results-oriented business, and you know, this is a difficult year. It strained a lot on the fan base, strained obviously a lot with people in that building and in that locker room. You know, starting off with Joe, you know, how do you think fans should feel about just kind of the near medium term future of Sun Devil football based on what we've seen from kind of this first year under Kenny Dillingham?
I'd say if fans collectively put their money where their mouth is, there's a lot to be excited about, because this is the foundation of something that could be special. I'm using as many like qualifying words as humanly possible, because you can't project and forecast years down the road. You just cannot do that in today's landscape of college athletics. You know, you feel that the staff, again, as we talked about numerous times, gets the buy-in of the players. You don't think that they're going to light a match to gasoline and napalm the entire program and they go kick their feet up at a cushy job at ESPN or with the Raiders or something along those lines. So if the resources can be contributed to this program, and those financial resources, of course, up until the last month or so have been nothing short of a cataclysmic failure at Arizona State when we talk about NIL and that sort of thing. If that can ramp up, and I know there have been signs of progress in the last month or two, then that's something that can be coupled with some energetic, hungry coaches that have a passion for this university, and that can be a pretty potentially dangerous, in a good way, combination. But that's entirely what's necessary, because there can be all the buy-in in the world. There can be all the energy and enthusiasm in the world. The head coach can say and truly mean that this place is special. But until the resources are there, it's going to be clawing at table scraps when it comes to trying to create a successful program. So I hope that the fans have greater confidence in the head coach and whatever the administration will be. Of course, different from 1 to 2 years ago, where you had a lot of fans rightfully saying, until this person and this person, and y'all know exactly who I'm talking about, are no longer at Arizona State, then I'm going to be on the sidelines. Those two people are gone. Obviously, one spot's been filled. The other will be filled at some point. So hopefully there's been enough for fans to say, I understand that this is not the final product. This is not the most beautiful thing right now on paper. We saw a 3-win team, and on, I believe, 4 occasions got smacked around, one of which to the hated rival. But this can improve dramatically and fairly quickly with the right resources. So I hope, as far as the fans, what their reaction should be is enough motivation to get involved, because, just saying nice things on social media or cheering from your seats at home, not going to get it done.
Yeah, I think there's legitimate reason for hope for this team to do better. Going back to my earlier point, I don't think the Big 12 as a whole, as a conference, is going to be a landscape that's going to really be a landmine for Arizona State, even with all the growing pains that this program is still going to experience in 2024. You hope that they pay their dues to the injury gods, if there is such a thing, and
with interest.
Yeah, and have a much healthier team in 2024. That's going to be paramount. Adding players for the transfer portal, especially at offensive line and linebackers, is going to be extremely crucial, for this team. And even if you're not able to land those by January 3rd. Which is when the current transfer portal window does close, you still have those 2 weeks from April 16th to the 30th, which I think right now are shaping to be absolutely critical for Arizona State, because you just don't know at this point how many quality additions you can get in the next few weeks. But you are going to have new names in the portal come April 16th, so that's going to be an area that ASU has to strike a lot of bullseyes again, especially at offensive line and linebacker. So I think if they're able to do that, with all the players that are coming back, with all the additions that they have, both in the transfer portal and from the high school ranks, I think there's definitely a valid reason for optimism. There should be a bowl eligible team in 2024. I know some fans are going to say, well, really, that's what you're aspiring for now after a 3-win season. But I know Joe, I don't know if it was last year or the year before that, did an excellent Sun Devil science piece that when you improve from 1 year to another, just to double the amount of wins, no matter how many wins you had the previous year, that is a very challenging task, and not really all that common as people think they are. So turnarounds do take time, and even the turnaround does take place, it's not usually all that dramatic. But again, I feel that there are a lot of things for ASU in place, to double the number of wins in 2024. But again, transfer portal, and not only what they do now in the next few weeks, but also in April, if they can fill those missing pieces of the puzzle at offensive line, at linebacker, I think this can be a much better team in 2024.
Yeah, I would say hopeful. I think that's the same tune that I was singing when we first recorded this. But the buy-in is something that we've already talked about. That is something that I've just being at practice has really been apparent to me. I think we are starting to see the benefits of the kind of this amass of NIL funding that fans have put somewhat. I don't think to the level that we are hoping for yet, Joe. But there has been a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? Just a good step forward in the right direction.
They've certainly improved.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still playing from behind, but
right.
I mean, objectively, it's improvement.
Definitely an improvement, and I think just to put it into perspective, to get somebody like which is news that kind of came out today, that you're going to get Raleek Brown at least on an official visit. I mean, if they're able to pull this off, I mean, I think a lot of ASU fans are going to say, hey, finally we get a guy from USC, and you can say Jake Smith, but, I know a lot of people are probably still a little upset with Eric Gentry a little bit, but in that sense, you can see a little bit of a glimpse there, and hopefully even the people that are still on the fence a little bit will say, okay, now I can see where the money is going. And I mean, ASU does have the number 2, I think, class right now in 2024. I don't know how that'll shake out eventually when the transfer portal's done post spring ball. But the buy-in, the little bit of influx that you see in the NIL help, again, like Joe said, there's people that have held grudges against 2 people that are not affiliated with the program anymore. They're gone. And, and for a lot of people, including my boss, Troy Skoma at Cactus Sports, that was a reason why he was kind of on the outside looking in, and now he's in. You see a lot of the buy-in in the players, the NIL help, and I think you obviously, if you can't tell already, I think you have a head coach that is really committed to ASU. That's just me though. I think when you kind of put these things together, that's kind of the trifecta of things that you need to build something. And I don't know. I kind of like to look at Texas, and so in terms of what Steve Sarkisian has done to set a culture. Texas has got some deep pockets, I'll say that. But once you kind of get that, and then you kind of get your players bought into what you're kind of selling, and that was a team that is in the college football playoff. So, just throwing that out there. So just because I know a lot of ASU fans don't like to be so like, well, just look at the team down south. Well, you can go look at Texas, or you can go look at Utah or whatever. But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I do think that Arizona, much to maybe some fans' chagrin, is a great blueprint. We've talked about it a couple times on this show. Just like the rebuild takes time, and it's going to be a painful process. Kenny Dillingham's been talking about bamboo for months now, and if this is the ultimately successful, it's going to be that process. There is going to be no overnight success. It's going to be painful. There's going to be some fits and spurts. But I think that what you saw here is just, it's tough to get a read just because there's not a whole lot that's concrete in terms of just going on. But rebellions and rebuilds are built on hope. So I think that right now you just have to hope, and you think that some of the institutional roadblocks are maybe falling by the wayside, or being chipped away at. And if you can get at least not a better competitive adjacent in the NIL front, maybe you can start to add some close the talent gap. You hopefully get some better injury luck. Just history tells you that you will to some degree. So I think that overall plus you have they talked about. I think the big thing is you have a head coach and a staff that kind of feeds off that is doing whatever they can. Not leaving no stone unturned. And this is going to be an incredibly competitive sport. No, it's always been, but it's just going to ramp up in terms of that going forward. So I think you have people there who, at least in terms of in the football office, understand the landscape and are going to do what they can there. Now, whether they get the help and the resources from at the university level, we'll see. But I think in terms of what they can control, cautious optimism. But yeah, again, real hard to get a concrete read on what we've seen so far in 23. So obviously a lot that we have discussed, a lot of stuff that we will continue to be discussing here in the future. But right now it's a good time to bring our last new Sun Devil interview of the evening. This defensive back we talked about, Javan Robinson, coming over from Wazoo, and some quality depth to the defensive backfield. All right, so you hop in the portal and you have some options, but why was Arizona State the right place for you? What were some of the aspects and the things that they were able to check off for you in terms of what you were looking for your next destination?
Before this whole process, I knew Arizona State would be like a great fit for me as far as I know the whole defensive staff. One of the coaches, Coach Coop, he recruited me out of high school to come to Washington State to begin with. So me and him always had a tight-knit relationship, and I feel like that was the best fit as far as me, knowing the defense. It's the same defense that I ran in my previous school, and it just fit perfect for me.
Then coming down to Tempe, this time not as an opponent, but on your visit, and got to see the facilities, the school, the university, everything that had to offer up close. What things kind of jumped out to you and struck you most when you finally got to see things in person?
Really how much of like home it felt. As far as I'm from Orlando, Florida, so I'm a big city type of kid. So Tempe, when I went there, it just felt just like home. Looked familiar, looked similar, so it just felt right.
So that seems to be something that I've heard from a few folks, just in terms of just the culture and the vibe that this program has put forth under Kenny Dillingham now heading into year 2. So what other aspects of the culture of the program is kind of obviously just still early in his tenure, but what is your read on the culture that Kenny's trying to install here in Tempe?
I feel like the culture he's trying to install is just he's allowing players to be themselves. A lot of places where you go is like, you almost have to, be someone you're not, and it's not always good, So I feel like when I came down, it's like I feel like I was able to be me and be the person I want to be, regardless of who's around. So I feel like just with that, he's instilled just players to come in and just be themselves.
What kind of impact do you think that has on a player's mindset? In covering the program the last year, it seemed like he really struck a good balance between players having fun, but also players working extremely hard as well, and kind of finding that middle ground that kind of is an optimal rate. From a player's perspective, what is it like just being in a program that wants to work extremely hard, but also have fun and let the players be themselves?
I feel like it's great, man. Because of course football is very important, but it's also life after football. So when you're able to be yourself and have fun while playing the game. Because at the end of the game, football is a game. So you have to have fun while doing it. So when you're having fun and being yourself, it makes everything else a lot easier.
So obviously in your last situation, Washington State, how much did the conference uncertainty and just obviously with kind of the realignments and everything, how much of that was a factor to you in terms of maybe exploring your other options?
At first, it really wasn't a factor. But as, the year kept going, of course, I started to think about it. I always felt that I was a Power 5 guy. So, when they were saying we might not be Power 5 anymore, might be playing these opponents, that opponent, I always thought, that, I wanted to be on the big stage. I wanted to be on under the big lights, on the TV screen. So I always felt that, it was going to be a hard decision I have to make. So, I decided to, enter the portal and, explore my options.
So obviously you had some experience playing against Arizona State. So even before kind of, you're thinking about just, maybe one day playing elsewhere. What was your view of, Sun Devil football, kind of from the opposing sideline?
It was kind of fun because, like I said, I know a lot of those coaches and a lot of those guys over there. So it was like rekindling the whole flame, man, seeing them again and seeing previous teammates, previous coaches that I've, been like this with for a long time, and just seeing them and after the game, having the chance to talk to them and things. It was actually great experience.
Did you get any feedback, maybe from like Trey Brown and just about who's
kind
of, made that same transition about just, what are some of the things that he told you about what life as a Sun Devil is like?
He just told me that it's way different than Pullman. First of all, he told me that. Second, he just told me, how great of a staff it is, and how how free he was able to play, and how great the culture is. And that was like the biggest things with me, coming here, just experiencing that culture, experiencing the the freedom, and just being able to just play free.
What was that like for you? Just, as you mentioned, an Orlando guy coming from a big city to Eastern Washington, in Pullman out there in the Palouse. What was life like there, making that adjustment from Florida to the Palouse?
It was challenging at first. I'm not gonna lie, it was challenging. Not just because of just the culture difference, but first the weather. The weather was challenging. I did never get that cold, and where I'm from, and coming here, and it's October, and it's 30 degrees outside. That's crazy. And so I had to for sure get used to it. But Like I said, when I first got here, it wasn't about just, how far away it was. It was just the relationships that I built with the coaching staff, to make me feel comfortable enough to, come this far away from home. So it really wasn't even about the weather, the culture, the different, changes for me. It was just really the coaching staff that led me that far.
So you mentioned that you this will be a kind of rekindling something that with your old coach and some familiar faces and the old coaches, as someone who's played in that Brian Ward defense, what is some of the things that really kind of stand out about his scheme, what he likes to do schematically, and, maybe especially what he likes to do with his DBs?
What stands out is it's a very diverse scheme. Like it gives you a lot of freedom to, it brings, like, with this scheme, you can, you can bring out your personality with this scheme. You can play press coverage, play off coverage, you can press bail, creep, you can do a lot of things with this scheme that, that in a lot of other schemes, it's kind of like, kind of basic. This scheme is like an NFL type of scheme. So with with this scheme, I feel like you can for sure, get your name known in this scheme.
And looking forward to, when you arrive here in Tempe, position coach and Brian Carrington, obviously a guy who's a young up and coming coach. What kind of stands out about him and what he likes to do with corners?
What stands out about Coach Carrington is just how he operates and how he treats his players. He gives his players the freedom to, do a lot of things and, bring out their personality. That's the biggest thing, being able to play free and being able to, do things that you weren't able to do at your previous school. That's the biggest key in my opinion, with me, just being able to be you on the field and, being able to, a coach that trusts his players to go out there and make the plays with their abilities. That's all you can ask for, really.
So for any Sun Devil fans, might not have seen you in action, even though you did, of course, play against them, got to start against them, I believe, this past season. Give our listeners and viewers a self-scouting report. What can they expect to see from you in terms of your skill set on the field?
You're going to see someone that's very passionate. I'll say that. Very passionate, full of energy, hardworking person, and just get ready for a show. That's all I can say for now. Get ready for a show because it's definitely going to be a show.
Of course, ASU's losing its starting corners from a season ago, so a lot of opportunity here. What kind of role are you expecting to have here with this defense in 2024?
Just being a leader, being a vocal leader. With me, being in this defense for 2 years and me knowing the ins and outs and me knowing everything that it is to the defense. Just being a leader, just filling that void of leadership that I feel like, as of right now, the defense needs. Just bringing a lot of the younger guys, up and, getting them the things that they need within the defense. So just being a leader in all aspects.
And of course, guys like Ro Torrance, D Ford moving on to play on Sundays. So, but there's still a lot of young up and comers in that defensive back room, especially at the corner position. What's your read on kind of what ASU has right now? Of course, adding yourself into that mix at corner.
They have a lot of guys that can play for sure. All those guys are good. All those guys are great guys. Just like I said, with me coming in, just being that leader and me. Kind of teaching them the whole defense in and out. Because like I said, I've been in this scheme for the last 2 years. So I know really everything that comes with this defense and just, helping them and teaching them things that they don't necessarily know now and just making the room grow as one.
So when you look ahead to next fall, when you're in that maroon and gold, what kind of goals have you set for yourself for this 2024 season?
I set a lot of big goals. I'm very, very big on goal setting. So I want to just, first win, all Big 12, of course, and also want to, be All-American also. I want to, got some big goals, but it's going to take some hard work to get there. So I'm ready for it.
That's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our new Sun Devil guest, quarterback Sam Leavitt, defensive lineman Justin Wodtly, and defensive back Javan Robinson, as well as our esteemed panel. Thank you guys so much for honestly coming back and doing this again, and the second time, even better. Hode, anybody who's not in the huddle, I mean, what the hell are they doing? But, tell those fine folks who perhaps, might take a good life choice, how they can get involved with what you're doing.
Yeah, basically go to devilsdigest.com. As we talked about this entire podcast, extremely busy time of year right now when it comes to the transfer portal, when it comes to additions from the high school ranks. Maybe there'll be an addition from the junior college ranks too when it's all said and done. Signing day is December 20th. So it is fast approaching, and the news is only going to get heavier in volume from here on out. So we'd love to have you in our community in the Sparky's Huddle at devilsdigest.com.
All right, Caleb, how can folks keep up with what you're up to?
Yeah, you can keep up with me on Twitter at Caleb Campero, CALEB CAMPERO. Trying to still gauge the whole Twitterverse and getting used to that still. I'm pretty active on Instagram, my personal Instagram, c._.campy. And then each is linked to my media page, Campero_media. Where that's where I'll post all my articles that I'm doing alongside Hode, and a lot of my little photography stuff that I dabble in, and just overall a little bit of a portfolio and a little bit more about me on there. So that's me.
And you can follow the show on the social media side on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, Instagram at Speak of the Devils. Subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, and follow me on social media everywhere at BDenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy 42. Before we get out of here, huge shout out and thank you to our sponsors, of course, leading the way with the good folks at devilsdigest.com. As you heard from Hode, plenty of reasons, especially in the foreseeable future, to get involved. This last week alone showed that names can pop out of nowhere, big things can happen in a hurry, and you want to be on the forefront of that. And you can get the best information around at devilsdigest.com. Our guy Caleb will also support you being a consumer and patron of Cactus Sports. Get on down to the store location on Mill Avenue, or check them out online, cactussports.com. If you're like me and you haven't even started any of your holiday shopping quite yet, just get it all done there in one fell swoop.
Sparky face helmets are in store now, so get your holiday shopping done for all your favorite Sun Devils. I will gladly be there to sell you whatever you want. So
there you go. Yeah.
And
extra incentive.
And as you heard on our last week's episode, that was my pick for uniform of the year, the Sparky face helmet. That's great.
If
now you can have one for Christmas.
Yeah, if you need one for your desk, for your room, for your man cave, they're there. So just come on down or shop online. So
are they full size and mini, or?
Oh, we have the authentics. If you want to put that thing on your head, if you want the replicas to just put on your mantle, or if you want the minis to put on your kitchen table because you love the Sun Devils so much, come on down.
There you go. Also, similar enthusiasm for our other sponsors, Jones Auto Group, Burrito Express, Spaghetti Shack, and Sun Devil Family Charities. A huge thank you to all of them.
And make sure you support all our sponsors, including homefieldapparel.com. Of course, the holidays are quickly coming up. Amazing selection of not just ASU stuff, but 180 other schools, T-shirts, crew necks, hoodies, joggers, everything you want. They had a huge drop of dad hats dropping today, as a matter of fact. And you can get 20 or 15% off by using offer code SOTD23 at checkout at homefieldapparel.com. And on that note, Joe and I will be back next week as we recap early signing day.